5 years after the beginning of the apocalypse, despite the Awakened fighting with all their might to resist the demons, the Earth was completely overrun by them. Most of humanity perished, with the remaining survivors falling into panic, or becoming puppets of the demons just to stay alive. The Earth, once a beautiful paradise for humanity, had turned into a blazing hell of terror. A young man runs with a girl on his back, saying they were entering the ruins and that inside, the demons wouldn't follow them. The girl tells her brother that she can't do this anymore, and that he should leave her and go on his own. However, the young man asks what she is talking about, saying that once inside the ruins, he would find something for them to eat. But right after saying that, he trips on the ground, dropping his sister and falling beside her. The boy gets up and tells Koyuki to hold on, picking up his sister in his arms and asking if she is okay, blaming himself for not watching where he was going. But his sister tells him that the poison's influence slowly consumes a person's body, and since she had been infected for 5 years, she thinks she has reached her limit. The older brother cries, apologizing for being useless, saying that if he had powers, she wouldn't have been infected. However, Koyuki places her hand on his face and asks what he is talking about, because if it weren't for him protecting her, she wouldn't have survived for 5 years. She tells him that it's okay to leave her there, because in the end, her brother needs to survive. Something red slowly approaches the older brother from behind, snatching his sister away as he turns, calling out to her. The boy notices something unusual and wonders what it is, seeing a demon holding the girl and saying it was lucky to have found a toy there, while the young man realizes that a humanoid demon is a high-level threat. The demon says Koyuki has a beautiful face and that it's a shame she wouldn't last long, but the older brother stands up, trembling, and tells the demon to let her go. The demon remarks that the boy is kind, above all else. Then it throws the girl aside, saying he is too kind, and immediately pierces her stomach. The boy falls into complete shock. He screams in rage at the demon, but the demon says that now that his toy is broken, it's the boy's turn. The boy, however, declares that he will send the demon to oblivion, and grabs a stone in his hand, charging at the demon, repeating that he will make it pay with its life. But the demon simply grabs the boy's face with one hand and questions if he is capable of that, asking what a powerless, trembling human like him could possibly do. Then throws the boy high into the air, telling him to stop shouting, inflicting severe wounds and making him cough up blood. The demon approaches again and states that humans will soon be extinct, then engulfs the boy in flames, saying he should hurry up and die already. But the boy notices some silhouettes amidst the fire, and wonders what is happening as he opens his eyes on the ground. The demon sees the boy awake and admits he is more resilient than expected, while forming a sword in his hand. The demon then says that, in that case, it will have a little more fun, charging at the boy with its sword, and stabbing his stomach right after. The demon asks why he isn't screaming since it should hurt, then keeps stabbing him, saying that the boy should beg for his life. But the young man just averts his gaze, looking at a statue among the debris and recognizing it, realizing it is a figure of an angel, one just like the one he gave to Koyuki. 10 years in the past, on Koyuki's birthday, the boy approaches her with an angel statue and wishes her a happy birthday. Koyuki is impressed by the angel, and the boy explains that he wanted to give her an angel because it would protect her forever. But the girl shakes her head, making her brother ask what was wrong. Koyuki says that it wouldn't be the angel protecting her, but rather her older brother, surprising him with her words. The boy places the statue on the ground and tells her she's right because both he and the angel would always protect her. Meanwhile, the boy in the present recalls the promise he made to his sister and failed to keep. 5 years ago, humans were running, questioning why monsters were appearing and why the area was filled with toxins. But the young man notices that his leg is injured this time, and he considers himself unlucky. Then he stumbles on a rock shortly after, falling to the ground and dropping his crutch. The young man looks back after that and sees a vortex sucking everything behind him. Then he tries to stand up, trembling, but falls to the ground again. He reflects that the only relief is that Koyuki had left earlier that morning, and as long as she survived, it would be fine. But he hears Koyuki's voice telling her brother to hold on while wearing a mask. Koyuki asks if her brother is okay, and the young man questions why she came there. But Koyuki removes the mask from her face and places it on her brother's face, telling him not to speak and to move quickly. He reflects that if everything had gone according to plan, Koyuki wouldn't have encountered this invasion, but she came back to save him, because even though they managed to escape the infected area, Koyuki remained poisoned, coughing up blood while they sat together. In her final moments, the young man cries on the ground, apologizing to his sister for not being able to protect her, and says that he will be with her soon. The demon complains that this is boring since the boy has given him nothing, and tells him to just prepare to pass on, piercing him. The statue is stained with the young man's blood, and a light begins to shine from the middle of its forehead, as two screens appear being projected. The system had been initiated, and the subject's initial abilities were also activating, setting the target time to 5 years in the past. Back at school, some people comment that Ryo is too weak and always acts scared, questioning if he is even a man, while Ryo lies injured on the ground, wondering what happened and if he hadn't already passed away. But he notices something strange right in front of him, seeing a man he recognizes as Chang and wondering what he was doing there. Since Chang controlled the gang in the city where Ryo and Koyuki lived 5 years ago, every day he would get drunk, but whenever he needed money, he would extort people. Chang asks how Ryo's younger sister is doing and if she is holding up well, since those infected by the venomous domain weaken quickly. Ryo simply stands up, wondering about his sister, but Chang says he is short on money for alcohol, so he will collect the protection fee in 3 days, and if he doesn't get it, he won't protect the little sister. As they walk away, the gang members comment that it's not fun to beat up weaklings while mocking Ryo, but the young man only wonders if his sister is really still alive. People walk through the streets, living their daily lives, and a woman exclaims that she managed to buy a really cheap handbag, while two girls reflect that booking a room at the hotel is really difficult. In the middle of the crowd, Ryo wonders if he is dreaming, because if the earth had already been taken over by demons, everything should have been reduced to ruins. Then he wonders why all these people are laughing and pauses to think about when was the last time he saw this scene. 5 years ago, the domains appeared, forcing residents to flee, and over time, only a few infected remained, while life continued normally outside of them. Only people who awakened special abilities, known as powers, and entered the domains could purify them. Humanity no longer suffered at that point, and people lived their lives casually, but no one knew that the countdown to the end of the world had already begun. Then Ryo realizes that he is 5 years in the past and has returned to his old life, and he runs toward his home, searching for his younger sister. He reaches a suburban district in the city, and enters a room seeing Koyuki lying on a bed. Ryo says that this really isn't a dream, and that he has returned 5 years into the past, but his eye suddenly begins to glow. He notices, by a clock, that it is April 21st, which means that Koyuki has already been infected for about a month. Ryo wonders why he didn't return a month earlier, because if he had, Koyuki wouldn't have been infected. But a system screen starts forming above the young man. He wonders who is there as the glow illuminates his face, and the system simply states that it is the leveling system. Ryo questions what that means and wonders what is happening. However, the system tells him that he is currently at level 0, and if he reaches level 99, he will be ready to save all of humanity. Ryo tells the system not to joke with him, because even the strongest awakened ones haven't done that, and there is no way he, who has no powers, could accomplish it. But the system tells him that he has unlocked his powers and needs to discover the details on his own. Then Ryo asks what the system is talking about. Thus, the system initiates teleportation, telling him to prepare, but a light surrounds him as Ryo asks it to wait a minute. Koyuki simply calls for her brother while still asleep, and Ryo is teleported to a dense forest, falling from the sky. He crashes face first into the ground and wonders where he is. The system informs him that this is the beginner's zone and that he can test his power here. But Ryo yells at the system not to joke around, saying he has no interest in saving humanity. He only wants to protect his sister, Koyuki. And the system responds that the fragmented ingredients in each domain can be used to create an antidote for the poison, but he will only obtain it if he clears all the domains. Ryo wonders if humanity, unable to find a cure, led to a large-scale infection and countless lives lost. And he questions whether, if he continues to grow stronger, he might be able to save Koyuki. In this world, domains were alternative dimensions that appeared only within enclosed spaces, and each domain functioned as a sealed time barrier. Their size varied. They could be as small as a park or cover half a city, but the terrain remained the same and structures stayed as they were. However, the conditions inside changed drastically, becoming infested with mutant creatures. Only awakened individuals whose bodies had antibodies against the poison could enter them. Ryo says he doesn't feel any discomfort and wonders if he really has awakened since nothing feels real, and he wants to know what his power is. Since the system told him to find out on his own, he deduces that he must fight magical beasts. But he reflects that if the system is telling the truth, this is his only chance to save Koyuki. And though he doesn't know what awaits him, he must at least try. Soon he hears a noise coming from the bushes. Ryo wonders what that sound is, noticing that something is approaching from ahead. Then he spots a creature within the bushes. Ryo asks what it is, but the capybara simply turns toward him, surprising the young man by being just a normal capybara. and he deflates when he realizes he mistook it for a magical beast and got scared for no reason, wondering why such a peaceful animal like a capybara is in such a dangerous place since it doesn't seem to be casually grazing. But Rio is startled when he gets closer, seeing that the capybara is devouring another animal. He wonders if capybaras aren't supposed to be herbivores, questioning whether this might be a mutated monster. Rio steps back, apologizing for interrupting its meal, and tells the capybara that he will leave now, while running away from it. But the capybara simply watches, still covered in blood. Rio says he was right. Any creature inside a domain can mutate, wondering how he could forget something so important. But he stumbles on a rock along the way, falling to the ground hard. Rio gets up, saying that if the capybara finds him, it won't be good. But then he hears the sound of a twig snapping under footsteps. Rio looks back, questioning if he has already been caught. As he stands up and spreads his arms, seeing a branch lying on the ground, Rio picks up the branch, saying that if the capybara attacks, he will strike it on the head with this. But the capybara's silhouette moves closer to the young man. Rio prepares to swing the branch at it, but the capybara attacks from behind, catching him off guard. Rio wonders how, since he thought it would come from the left, and the mutated capybara bites his leg, while another capybara bites his arm, making him question where the second one came from. The young man's arm begins to bleed, and his leg does the same. Rio realizes that he can't shake them off. At this rate, they will bite him until he dies. So he wonders if there's anything he can use to get them off him, or something to distract them. Spotting a root on the ground and grabbing it while thinking he just needs a moment. Then, gripping the root tightly, it moves like a whip in his hand, wrapping around both capybaras, biting him and pulling them away from the young man. Rio wonders what is happening as he watches this, but the root slams both capybaras into the ground. Rio stands up, saying this is his perfect chance, grabbing another branch from the forest floor and stabbing the capybaras with all his strength. Both capybaras collapse, injured on the ground. Rio realizes that he is finally safe, since he managed to defeat these creatures on his own, and it feels like a dream. He still doesn't believe it is real after everything that happened. Then he looks up, reflecting that he finally understands what his power is. Seeing that his power is the control of senses, and that he has unlocked the beginner level. Rio wonders what kind of ability he has gained. After 5 years, many awakened had the power to control fire, water, or electricity, and some had incredible abilities to transform into beasts and evolve their senses. But he had never heard of this kind of power before. Holding the tree root, he reflects that he instinctively grabbed the root to shake off the two creatures, and it moved on its own. Then he wonders if this means his power controls plants or something similar. But he quickly dismisses the possibility, seeing that the system screen would have indicated if that were the case. Rio questions whether he might be able to control things much broader than just that, and he calls the system, telling it to send him back to the real world since he is injured and needs to heal before completing missions. But the system informs him that he cannot leave this place until he destroys the energy core and closes the domain. Rio realizes that the core is inside the strongest beast of the domain, and he wonders if the system is telling him to just die, as a silhouette approaches him from behind. He panics as he turns around, completely shocked by the creature he sees. A massive capybara stands before him, which immediately tries to bite him the moment it spots him. Rio goes into a frenzy at the sight, questioning if this is a giant capybara and if it is on a completely different level than the two previous enemies. But the giant capybara suddenly looks to the side, noticing the two injured capybaras on the ground. Rio backs away, wondering if they are its kin, and mutters that he is done for. But the capybara immediately opens its mouth and attempts to bite him, smashing its paw into the ground as Rio narrowly escapes. Rio realizes that the creature's strength and size are on an entirely different level, and that if it hits him, it will crush him like an insect. But the young man quickly shuts his eyes. He extends his hand toward a vine in front of him, and says that in that case he will give this a try. Then, using both hands, he asks for help, gripping the two vines tightly and willing them to move. And so, they twist and coil in Rio's hands, surging toward the giant capybara and wrapping around its legs moments later, bringing the capybara crashing to the ground, completely injured. Rio realizes that he successfully moved the vine, and that if he finds proper equipment for this power, he could become incredibly strong. But the capybara's legs begin to move again. Rio reflects that this shouldn't be possible, but the giant capybara breaks free. The young man curses under his breath as he watches, standing frozen, then immediately starts running from the capybara. However, the beast starts swinging its paw at him, sending Rio flying against a tree. The young man gets injured and reflects that the capybara is too big and that the vine alone won't be enough to restrain it again. Rio realizes that he needs much more force, so he decides to head deeper into the forest. Meanwhile, the vines tighten around the capybara, injuring its limbs. Rio reflects that he still has some time, so he forces himself up to escape, dashing into the deeper part of the forest. Ryo mutters that he has to make this work, but the capybara breaks free from the vines right after. Ryo presses his hand against a tree to try using his power. He reflects that if he can control the vines growing there, he might have a chance to win. But then he suddenly coughs up blood, still holding onto the tree while using his ability. Ryo tells it to move and desperately pleads with the tree, as the capybara continues searching for him. But Ryo spits out even more blood, collapsing onto the ground as he reflects that his body has reached its limit. But Koyuki is still waiting for him. Koyuki once said she wanted to drink soda and asked if Ryo could find some, to which her brother replied that he would. So he searched around the store and noticed that there were none left. And since it was rare for Koyuki to ask for something, he decided he would look somewhere else after checking one more time. But at that moment, Ryo looks to the side, seeing Koyuki on the floor, murmuring that she has to endure it because she doesn't want Ryo to see her like this or worry about her. Ryo wonders if she has been enduring the pain all this time, and as her older brother, he should be the one protecting her. But in the end, things turned out this way. Then he remembers the demon holding Koyuki and the girl begging her brother to run, and begging him to live. A tear falls from Ryo's face. He reflects that he will never let something like this happen again. Then, the capybara finally catches up to him, standing behind the young man. But Ryo simply continues gripping the vine in his hand. The capybara lets out a final, desperate roar. Ryo realizes he hears something, the breathing of the forest, as if he has become one with it. Then the forest begins to move. The capybara becomes completely trapped in the vines of the forest, collapsing onto the ground beside Ryo. Ryo notices that he could escape once again thanks to the vines, but they start tightening around the capybara's neck. Its eyes turn completely red with rage. Then, the capybara starts trembling, before coughing up blood and going lifeless. Ryo reflects that he really did it. He falls to his knees, telling Koyuki that he succeeded, and he says that his whole body is in pain, wondering if it's because he pushed himself too hard, cursing the world right after. But the system informs him that he has defeated the giant capybara and leveled up to level 5, restoring his injuries. Ryo lies on the ground, unconscious. Then he slowly opens his eyes, realizing what just happened. He wonders how his wounds are disappearing, deducing that every time he levels up, his injuries heal, meaning he could recover from even critical wounds. Then he notices the energy core above the capybara. Ryo reflects that the domain will soon disappear without the energy core, since he heard that once it vanishes, it transforms into some kind of item. Then, the core transforms into a dagger and a Q. Ryo remarks that he is truly lucky, since it became equipment, and he also obtained an energy stone, which he can sell for money. But he notices a flower in front of him and wonders what it is, only to see it dissolve into a vial, revealing itself to be an anesthetic flower. Ryo wonders if he could use this for Koyuki, since those infected by the venomous domains suffer unbearable pain from its attacks, and no pain medicine exists. They can only endure it. But if this medicine works, Koyuki wouldn't have to suffer anymore. The system states that every domain contains organisms with pain-relieving properties and begins a level calculation, informing Ryo that the backpack function has been unlocked, allowing him to store items as he wishes from now on. Ryo wonders if this means that only now should he start truly experiencing things, but the system simply announces that the domain will soon disappear without the energy core. As the young man asks it to wait, since he hasn't gotten his answer yet, he is suddenly pulled in by the energy while his eyes widen. He sees the place where he got injured and wonders what exactly happened there. Then a portal opens before him, pulling him inside. Ryo appears in the city, wondering why he is there, but as he rushes forward, thinking he needs to get home quickly and give the medicine to Koyuki, he accidentally bumps into someone's shoulder. Chang turns around, telling the person to watch where they're going, but quickly realizes it's someone familiar. Asking if it isn't Ryo, who simply responds that he's in a hurry. But Chang laughs and asks his friends if they heard that, how this loser just brushed them off. Then he says the kid is talking too much, preparing to punch him, but Ryo effortlessly dodges. Chang is stunned, wondering what just happened. But Ryo had moved on his own, and he sees his system status, showing his level 5 stats and his beginner level sense control ability. Chang scoffs that Ryo had the nerve to dodge his attack, and tries to hit him again, saying his luck won't last long. But Ryo dodges once more, causing Chang to feel uneasy as he stares at him. But Ryo simply reflects that it's not his imagination. He can see the air shifting with the curve of the attacks, and his body feels lighter, allowing him to evade them. Then he glances at his status window and wonders if leveling up improved his physical abilities. Chang, however, grows furious and declares that he's going to crush Ryo. His friends murmur that their boss is getting serious. After all, he's the city's leader, and no one has ever dared to stand up to him. Ryo reflects that he has heard that before. Since he used to be afraid of him, he was once terrified, utterly shaken. But compared to the monsters of the domain, Chang is nothing to him. The man swings his fist at Ryo, but Ryo blocks it with his arm, then immediately closes the distance between them, shocking all of Chang's friends. As he throws Chang to the ground with a judo move, Chang lies defeated, questioning if he really lost to someone like Ryo. But Ryo tells him that from now on, he will be the one avoiding Ryo. Chang's friends prepare to attack the young man all at once. But as time passes and the fight unfolds, they all end up on the ground. A young man with green hair wonders how Ryo could be so strong, wanting to know if he is really the same person. While Ryo looks at his hand, thinking that he actually won, and he smiles, realizing that those people weren't that strong after all. Then he heads home. Koyuki is lying on her bed. Ryo sits beside his sister and calls out to her, while opening the system screen and reaching inside, pulling out the anesthetic potion he obtained from the domain. Ryo wonders if this medicine will work properly, then pours it into his sister's mouth. The girl begins to sweat after taking the medicine, but the sweating stops shortly after. Ryo feels relieved and says that it really worked. Then he asks the system where he can find ingredients for the venomous domain's antidote. The system states that the ingredients are scattered across various dangerous areas and that the risk is extremely high. So if he were to go now, he wouldn't return alive. Ryo deduces that, in other words, he must continue entering domains to level up. Koyuki wakes up soon after, lying next to him. Ryo asks how she is feeling, and Koyuki asks what happened, because it feels strange. Her body still feels weak, but the pain has completely disappeared. Ryo hugs her, saying that it's incredible. Koyuki places her hand on Ryo's face and asks why he is injured, becoming alarmed as she looks at his face, seeing the wounds and demanding to know why he is hurt. Time passes as Ryo explains everything to her. Koyuki sums it up. Ryo awakened, went into a domain without telling her, barely made it back alive, and then fought Chang and his gang. Ryo asks his sister not to be mad and to eat something first, but Koyuki demands to know if he realizes how dangerous that was, saying she doesn't want the anesthetic, especially if it means her brother has to get hurt for it. Ryo sighs as he calls her name and tells her that the world changed in the blink of an eye. Now that he has awakened, if he doesn't face the problem head-on, they won't survive together. Koyuki is surprised and wonders if this is really her brother, because Ryo seems like a completely different person from the coward he was before. She asks if he won't stop, and Ryo nods, saying he will continue entering domains to level up. The girl, however, makes him promise that no matter what happens, he will prioritize his own safety, because he is her only family, and she doesn't want to lose him. Ryo places his hand on her head and says he promises, while deciding that it's better not to tell her that the antidote's ingredients are in highly dangerous areas. Koyuki hugs her brother and asks if he can feed her porridge since she feels weak now, and Ryo calls her a brat, saying she's old enough to eat on her own. The day passes and the siblings continue talking. Owon is cooking something in a giant frying pan. Then someone calls the woman Lisa and tells her that next week they will form a team to enter the eastern domain of Gyus and are recruiting awakened of all kinds, asking if she is interested. Lisa agrees and says she would like to go. Ryo spits blood as a demon coils around his neck, holding him captive before leaving. The demon questions if this is all his strength, saying that even if he has a special power, Ryo isn't that impressive, because in the end, he is just trash. Then the demon prepares to cut him down and send him to the afterlife, slashing at him immediately after. Ryo's eye burns as he is struck, and then he wakes up in his bed, realizing that he had the same nightmare again, because if things play out the same way as before, he will run away again, or become something even scarier than the future. Ryo sits beside his sister on the bed. He reflects that the medicine he brought from the domain can only temporarily relieve the pain of the disease. The poison hasn't been cured, so for now the length of time she remains unconscious will increase, and her body will only grow weaker, meaning they haven't escaped danger. Ryo needs to prepare to enter another domain as soon as possible. The day passes for him. Ryo heads to the combat hall. He reflects that this is a place where only awakened can enter, and that since leveling up, his physical abilities and senses have significantly improved. But in his previous fight, he had fought blindly without any strategy, and because of that, he suffered so much damage by the end of the battle. Ryo didn't know how to fight properly, and things would only get more dangerous from now on. With his current ability, it would be impossible to return without getting injured. That was why he needed to keep leveling up. Ryo sees several people fighting inside the combat hall. He wonders if they are all awakened, finding the atmosphere socially awkward. One of the instructors approaches him and asks who he is, since he has never seen him before. Ryo replies that he came to learn martial art. Ryo notices something incredible. He can feel the magical power coming from this man's body, and it's probably stronger than his own. The instructor tells him that everyone here is awakened and asks what Ryo's rank is. Ryo replies that he is probably an F rank. Awakened individuals are classified based on their magical power, with the strongest being S rank and the weakest F rank. Since he is only level 5, he is at the bottom. The instructor tells him that the fee for an F rank is 10,000 yen per month, and if he pays for 3 months upfront, he will get a 10% discount and be assigned a trainer. Ryo tries to bargain, asking if it could be cheaper, but a receptionist approaches him, telling him that he can make the payment right there. The young man changes into the dojo's training uniform and reflects that a good thing was that he managed to exchange the energy stones he obtained from the domain, allowing him to afford the fee. A girl approaches Ryo, asking if he is her new student, and Ryo, who had been looking bored, suddenly opens his eyes wide when he sees the girl. It's Lisa, who will be his trainer. Ryo wonders if a girl is really going to teach him, feeling awkward as usual in social situations. But Lisa tells him not to underestimate her just because she's a girl. Then she grabs him by the collar of his uniform. Ryo realizes that she is incredibly fast. Then she pins him down by his neck, holding him against the ground while sitting on top of him, gripping his belt. Lisa asks if Ryo can see the difference in their skill levels, and questions why he is staring at her like that, asking if there's something on her face. But Ryo simply shakes his head, saying that she just feels familiar for some reason. Lisa scoffs, saying it won't be easy for him because she is one of the top 3 fighters in the hall. Ryo, however, asks why someone with her skill level is training someone weak like him, since other people probably didn't want to teach him. He wonders if Lisa specifically chose him. Lisa says he seems pretty sharp, making Ryo question if he is overthinking things. Then she explains that she is an F rank and that most awakened in this class are D or C rank, and the gap between levels cannot be bridged. No matter how good her martial arts skills are, she cannot defeat a D rank. So she kept doing chores at the dojo, cooking meals, and running errands. But now that there was another F rank like Ryo, she finally had a chance to teach someone, and she was grateful for that. Ryo nods in understanding. Lisa tells Ryo that the members are forming a group to enter the Goose domain next Friday and asks if he would like to join, since it's a rare opportunity. She says she will check if she can bring him along, while Ryo tries to tell her to wait. However, he notices that Lisa isn't even listening to him. Above all, he questions why it feels like he has seen Lisa somewhere before. As he looks at Lisa's back, he sees a vision of a figure engulfed in flames. Ryo remembers, and there's no doubt about it, she was once the strongest S rank awakened with fire abilities. He wonders why she is an F rank now. She was known worldwide as an S rank awakened with fire abilities, not only capable of freely manipulating flames, but also possessing exceptional combat skills. He heard rumors that she had never lost a fight, but despite how strong Lisa was, one day she lost her life for an unknown reason. So he reflects, who would have thought that this Lisa is the same person? He wonders how she ended up being treated like this now. Lisa's master approaches and asks if this is the F rank who wants to join their group, saying it's a problem because they already have enough members. Lisa argues that the opportunity should be open to all ranks, since having more people means more safety, and if she acts as a guard, she can help in some way. The master agrees, saying that the more people, the better, and that Ryo can join. Lisa thanks him. Ryo realizes that this is not the time to refuse and wonders if people here ever listen to what others are saying. However, either way, he still needed to enter a domain to level up, and doing so with others was safer, making it the right choice. During the week, aside from taking care of Koyuki, Ryo focused entirely on training at the combat hall, sparring with Lisa on the tatami. Lisa takes him down, kicking his arm and making Ryo lose balance. Lying defeated on the ground, Ryo reflects that Lisa is incredible. He had no idea she was this strong. While Lisa asks if he plans to keep going like this, calling him too weak, Ryo asks her to wait a moment since he needs to catch his breath and requests 5 minutes. Lisa says she'll get some water as well. The young man reflects on how unbelievable it is that he is training with Lisa. Even though she is F rank, her techniques are at the highest level possible, and this surprises him because he also leveled up while training there. People say that life-threatening situations can trigger a second awakening, but someone as strong as Lisa rarely appears. Yet just a year after becoming an S rank, she lost her life. That means her awakening should be happening soon, and if he could help her awaken earlier than expected. Ryo tries to speak, but his mouth is blocked. The system warns him that, as a reincarnator, he cannot speak about future events, or it will cause an unprecedented catastrophe. Ryo curses the system as he feels a sharp pain but mutters that he understands. However, when he looks up, he is caught off guard. Lisa is already prepared to kick him, but Ryo quickly rolls away and blocks her kick. Lisa is surprised and wonders how he did that, while Ryo complains that attacking out of nowhere is cheating. Lisa tells him that the 5 minutes are up and that he shouldn't call her by name. He should address her as master, so she tells him to get up since they are continuing the training, and Ryo agrees. Lisa reflects that he had just barely managed to dodge her earlier, but now he had actually blocked her attack. That meant Rio's growth rate was abnormal, but unfortunately, he was still an F rank just like her. On another day, in an abandoned warehouse deep in the forest, the group gathers for the domain expedition, and the leader explains that the tunnel ahead is the entrance to the domain. One of the dojo members remarks that it looks normal to him. Then the group leader warns them not to say things like that once they step inside, because the domain extends throughout the tunnel. The dojo members tense up and ask if it is really okay for E ranks to enter, and if it's actually safe. Meanwhile, a blonde-haired man from the dojo speaks up, saying that this is exactly why being an E rank or F rank is terrible. If they want rewards, they have to face the risks. The group leader explains that the crystal orb darkens depending on the concentration of magical energy, and right now it's fine. He shows them that the light is weak at the moment, meaning the area is safe, so E ranks and F ranks should stick together and handle whatever comes their way. However, the blonde man assures the leader that there's no need to worry. If any mutants appear in the domain, he and Kai will take care of it. Rhea recalls hearing that the crystal orb is a high-grade item that requires a massive amount of energy to create, and he questions if things are really that simple. However, Kai seems experienced when it comes to domains. Lisa places a hand on Rio's shoulder and asks what's wrong, wondering if he is nervous about entering his first domain. But Rio asks if she has ever been inside one before. The girl playfully responds that she is his master and will protect him, while Rio grumbles about her grabbing him. Inside the dungeon, the group encounters a glowing mushroom while exploring. Lisa mentions that there are a lot of luminous mushrooms in this area, and Rio explains that they could be mutated species, but he is suddenly startled by what he sees ahead. As Kai warns everyone to prepare for battle, something is coming. A group of red lizards emerges, but Kai tells everyone not to panic, saying they can be easily defeated. One of the lizards lunges at Lisa, but before it can reach her, Rio's dagger pierces through it, causing the creature to collapse among the glowing mushrooms. Rio asks Lisa if she is okay, but Lisa stares at the blood on her, visibly shaken. The young man notices Lisa's trembling, so he asks again if she's alright, but Lisa tries to play it off, saying everything is fine. However, the blonde man mocks her, asking if she is scared just because of a lizard and where all her enthusiasm went, remarking that Rio is proving to be more useful than her. He sneers that not only is she an F rank, but she also lacks courage, and asks when was the last time she entered a domain. Does she feel ashamed? Lisa lowers her head and apologizes to Jin. Rio reflects that Jin also seemed like a low-level awakened, but Kai interrupts, saying that was enough and that Lisa had entered the domain for the first time, so it was natural for her to be scared, and Jin agrees. Kai shares that during his first time, he was surrounded by wolves and ended up in the mud, and Lisa wanted to know if it was true. He tells the girl to relax, assuring her that he was there and wouldn't let her get a single scratch. Rio thinks that Kai seemed to be a C rank, but didn't look down on them, as he was kind and reliable like a group leader. The group soon comes across multiple tunnels. Kai explains that the paths split there, and for now they would pair up and explore separately. He adds that the color of the crystal hadn't changed, meaning it was safe, and if they didn't find the energy core, they would return in an hour. The dojo members remarked that this made the domain easy since they were scared, and if there were only red lizards, they could defeat them and complete the mission. But Lisa looks anxious as she stares down. Rio asks if they were going too, and the girl nods. At the back of the group, Jin says that Kai was very good to everyone there. Kai simply states that everyone there was a valuable companion above all else. Meanwhile, Rio slashes a few red lizards with his dagger. Lisa is frightened and tries to burn one but ends up trembling. The lizard charges at her, trying to bite her, startling Lisa with its attack. However, she looks to the side, seeing that Rio defeated the lizard before it could reach her. Lisa falls to the ground right after. She says she couldn't do this, that she was too weak, and that someone like her wouldn't survive. Rio, however, tells her that wasn't true, that she would adapt soon and become capable of winning, growing stronger than anyone. He tells her not to give up and to believe in herself. Lisa thanks him for encouraging her and says he was much braver than she was. Rio says he was scared too, but he had a reason to want to be strong. Lisa asks about his reason, and Rio says she must have one too, wondering if it was so she could have a better chance to fight alongside Kai. Lisa becomes embarrassed and asks what he's talking about, but Rio says that Kai was perfect, so he understood why she liked him. Mushrooms continue to grow on the domain floor. Lisa asks what that was, while Rio covers her mouth and says something was coming. A red plant, ready to devour anything in front of it, but it suddenly falls to the ground among the mushrooms. Rio questions the carnivorous plant, and Lisa says it didn't seem strong, asking him to let her handle it. Rio tells her to wait a second. Lisa asks what was wrong, and Rio says he didn't know, but he had a bad feeling about it, reflecting that there was something terrible about this plant, and that his instincts told him not to approach it. Rio says they should stay back and observe from there instead of going after the plant, and Lisa asks why not, but Rio can't explain. Lisa says she understands what he means. The plant trembles on the ground toward a rock, but then it starts emanating a crimson energy. Lisa wonders if the carnivorous plant had disappeared. Rhea reflects that the plant was done for, but the terrible presence hadn't been erased yet. Then he tells Lisa to stay there a little longer and not move. 10 minutes later, Ryo thinks that the terrible presence seems to have vanished, until they hear a scream. He wonders if that voice belonged to the E rank from their group, and wants to know what happened. The screams continue, and Lisa asks what was going on, while Ryo says that if the scream was real, they had encountered a terrible beast, wondering if it was a strong beast or something similar because there was something strange about this domain. Lisa asks what they should do since they would probably be fine as long as Kai and Jin were with them. But Ryo covers her mouth and signals for silence, as he realizes the terrible presence is back, wondering if the carnivorous plant had appeared again. Kai and Jin soon arrive at the carnivorous plant's chamber. Lisa notices Kai and feels relieved, thinking she would be safe, and tries to step out from behind the rock. But Jin says that everyone was lifeless and that they had already gathered enough information, and the only ones left were the two of them. Kai says they need to confirm the bodies, frightening Lisa with their attitude. Kai explains that they entered the domain because of an elusive creature, and that lowering their guard would result in instant defeat, just like the first time he was there. Jin praises him, saying he was smart for using the E and F ranks as bait to gather information, and Kei responds that it was good because of the stone, since E and F ranks were useless trash and only served as bait for mutant beasts. Ryo wonders if that was the reason they brought so many low-level members, and if Kai had really fooled him with his act, while Lisa cries, questioning why this was happening, remembering Kai saying he wouldn't look down on her for being a low rank since her physical abilities were incredible, and no one could take her down, because even an F rank could contribute in a domain. Then she feels terrible because everything was a lie, just a false story made up by Kai. Kai asks where the bodies are, but Jin wonders if they were eaten, since that had never happened before, wanting to know if they did something to enrage the creature. The mushrooms continue glowing on the ground, and some kind of creature was behind the two of them. Jin questions what that sound was as he turns around. It was a giant bat, ready to take them down. The bat uses a supersonic attack, and both try to stay alert and calm. Rhea reflects that first, a carnivorous plant appeared, and now a giant bat, wondering where the carnivorous plant had gone in this case, while Jin rushes toward the creature, saying he will defeat it. Kai tells him not to charge in like that, but the bat merely blocks Jin's attack, then pierces his stomach, and throws Jin against the wall, ripping out the adventurer's heart in the process. The bat launches a sonic attack and charges toward Kai, but it is frozen by Kai's ice magic. Ryo wonders if he managed to freeze it in an instant and if that was the power of a C rank. Kai jokes that the bat wasn't that tough after all, but the bat lunges at the man, piercing his heart as well, and throwing him far away. Kai lands beside Ryo and Lisa, his lifeless eyes staring in their direction. Lisa is shocked by the scene before her, but Ryo covers the girl's eyes, while reflecting that he must not panic, as he would not die here. He knew something was strange about the domain and wonders if he was missing something important, questioning why Kai's group and his own encountered different monsters, and if this was an illusion. Ryo wonders if it was all because of the growing mushrooms, deducing that all of this could be hallucinations. Then he asks Lisa if she can burn the mushrooms in that room with fire, and Lisa responds that she can. Rhea reflects that the carnivorous plant and the giant bat might just be hallucinations, but the injuries and deaths were real, meaning at least one real creature was in that cave. If they burned the source of the hallucinations, they might be able to see the true form of the creature. Seeing that it was a gigantic serpent, Lisa asks what that was, and Ryo says it was the true form of the monster that defeated everyone and that it looked different because of the mushrooms. Then he states that the creature must have an energy core. Lisa says it seemed to be returning to its nest and that this was their chance to escape. However, the serpent slams its tail against the rock, shattering it, and turning to face the two awakened. Lisa asks why it hadn't calmed down after eating, and Ryo says that meant it would only settle once it had taken down everyone in the area, as it lunges toward them. But Ryo dodges while holding on to Lisa. He reflects that it was too close, but the serpent strikes him in the stomach, injuring the boy. Ryo wonders if it was because they could see beyond the hallucination and that the serpent seemed enraged. They couldn't avoid this fight. If they destroyed the core, they could close the domain. If they lost, they would be food. Those were their only options. He says he will control the vines to restrain the serpent and that Lisa should set them on fire because the serpent was too strong, and that was the only way to defeat it. Lisa says she can't do it and that there was no other way. Ryo tells her that if they can't do this, they will lose here, so they have no other choice. Ryo runs, searching for a vine, saying he needs to find one, but Lisa shouts for him to be careful. At that moment, Ryo is struck by the serpent, falling to the ground near the vines. Ryo tries to touch them with his hand, activating his sensory control ability, which the system informs him is at the beginner level. binding the serpent with the vines. Ryo shouts that now is Lisa's chance. Lisa tries to stand up, thinking that she can do this and that she only needs to set the vine on fire. But she remembers Ryo telling her not to be afraid, and about her saying that her responsibility was to enter a domain and close it. Then she decides that she would no longer be afraid because if she was scared, she wouldn't be able to defeat the serpent. The vines wrapped around the serpent begin to catch fire, burning the creature. Lisa is surprised because she was able to do it, but Ryo thinks something is wrong as the serpent doesn't react as if it were being burned. The snake then breaks free and charges at Lisa, biting the girl immediately after. Ryo shouts for his friend, but the serpent traps her in its mouth. The boy wonders what he did to make everything go so wrong. Then he notices a glow on the serpent, realizing it was the same glow as the mushrooms and questioning whether the serpent was an illusion too. At that moment, the serpent throws Lisa to the ground. Seeing this, Ryo jumps onto the serpent, grabbing onto it and moving toward the glowing spot, trying to understand what that shining thing was. But the serpent moves to shake him off, causing the boy to fall to the ground with the stone in his hand. Ryo realizes that he succeeded and now sees its true form. The serpent turns to stone, which is why it wasn't burned. Ryo jumps off the ground immediately after, holding his dagger to pierce the serpent with ease. But as he stabs it, he realizes that because it is made of stone, his weapon won't cause any damage. So he keeps leaping around the serpent, declaring that he wouldn't give up no matter what, activating his sensory control again. Surprised that it happened, Ryo questions whether this could be due to the magical power flowing inside the serpent's body, then deduces that the glowing stone must be its weak spot, and says he needs to jump there, but it's moving too fast. The serpent charges at Ryo, who is bleeding but preparing himself. Lisa, still on the ground, reflects that her attack didn't work and wonders why Ryo didn't run, and she remembers when she kicked Ryo, but the boy dodged her strike. Lisa pauses in the middle of the motion and asks what Ryo was doing. Ryo says he was dodging the attacks, while reflecting that if her kick had landed, he would have ended up in the hospital. Lisa tells him that he dodged her attacks 3 times, and Ryo asks if that was bad. The instructor says yes because he has to defeat her, and if he keeps focusing on running and dodging, he will never win against her. Therefore, when fighting a stronger enemy, running alone would be impossible, and if he doesn't think about counterattacking, he won't survive. Lisa realizes that in this situation, Ryo isn't giving up. Then the boy keeps slashing and declaring that it's not over yet, launching vines toward the serpent, which wrap around the creature's mouth. Ryo climbs on top of it, but the vines break and the serpent opens its mouth. The boy reflects that since leveling up, his abilities have grown a lot, but he was still training the basics with Lisa, remembering her saying the goal was 2,000 repetitions, and him complaining that it was too much. Ryo grips the serpent's crystal and says this was too easy, like taking candy from a child, as he charges toward the serpent. He drives his dagger into its body, realizing that was its weak spot. The blade slices through the giant serpent's skin until it reaches a crack that was already there. Ryo recognizes that this is the exact spot. Then he plunges the dagger into it. The serpent begins to crumble as it roars in pain, falling apart into pieces on the ground shortly after. Ryo collapses to the floor, injured. The system notifies him that he has defeated the giant serpent and gained 3 levels. Grateful, the boy realizes that he survived once again. Then he sees the energy core in front of him, which transforms into a yellow energy cube and an energy cluster. Ryo wonders how much he could get by selling the cube, but his attention shifts to the energy cluster. He touches it, and it begins to dissolve. As a result, he gains the ability Psychic Attack, with a cooldown of 6 hours. Ryo realizes that he has never heard of an Awakened gaining an ability from an energy core, but he would look for more information later since he needed to take Lisa to the hospital. Ryo holds Lisa and asks if she is okay because they need to get out of there, but Lisa only coughs up blood. Still, she says she's exhausted, and Ryo tells her that she will become an Awakened known throughout the world, and Lisa says that sounds like a dream, and that she feels cold, asking if Ryo could hold her tightly. Ryo hugs Lisa and tells her that this wasn't a dream and that she should believe and stay with him. Lisa thanks Ryo and bids him farewell. The boy panics and says he will never let someone die in front of him again, that he will save Lisa. Because he will save her, the system notifies him that he has unlocked the ability Vitality Transfer, and that all his basic abilities have been unlocked. Ryo is shocked and asks what this ability could be. Then, a yellow energy flows from the vines in the water, moving toward Lisa's body, healing the girl as she levitates. Ryo asks how Lisa is feeling, and Lisa starts coughing. In a hospital within the city, Ryo, who was asleep in bed, suddenly wakes up in shock, opening his eyes, shouting Lisa's name as he gets up from the bed. Ryo wonders why he is in a hospital, and who brought him there, as he remembers nothing. Wanting to know if Lisa coming back to life was just a dream, Ryo gets up from the hospital bed and heads toward the door, but he starts feeling dizzy as he gets closer. However, the door opens and he sees Lisa, the one he was searching for. Ryo asks about Lisa when he finds her at the door. Lisa questions why he got up, since he was still very weak and needed to rest in bed. However, she is interrupted by Ryo's embrace as he thanks her for being safe. But both step back, their faces turning red. Ryo apologizes and Lisa says it's okay, that he doesn't need to worry about it. Lisa tells the story, and Ryo asks if he passed out after that. The girl nods and says that when she woke up, all of her injuries were healed, but Ryo wasn't at 100%, seeing him collapse on the ground after using vitality transfer. But in any case, she needed to get him out first, so she carried him on her shoulders. However, she realized that Ryo was really heady. Then she saw Kai lying on the ground, but she simply left while carrying Ryo. Ryo apologizes and says that escaping must have been difficult and that it must have been tough for her to help him. Lisa tells him not to worry about that since she was the one who asked him to hold her tightly while she was on the verge of death, and he did. But then she realizes what she just said and gets embarrassed. Ryo says that she was cold, so he just did it, and Lisa responds that he was warm. Then she asks what ability he used to heal her because she had never heard of such an incredible skill. Ryo reflects that this was his second ability, vitality transfer, and that maybe he passed out as a side effect of the skill, but he felt like he was forgetting something. He asks Lisa what the government did since many people died this time. Lisa says they asked a lot of questions while Ryo was hospitalized and that she explained everything, including about Kai and the E and F ranks. The government performed an autopsy on the bodies, confirming that they died because of the mutant beasts and had no connection to anything else. Then the government concluded that Kai and Jin died during their fight with the mutant beast, and that Ryo and Lisa only survived by chance. Ryo asks if she didn't mention anything about him. Lisa says that if people knew an F rank defeated a mutant beast, it would cause an uproar, and since his healing ability was incredible, it was better to keep it a secret. Ryo thanks her and says that's really what he wanted, while reflecting that if he mentioned reincarnation and the level system, it would create chaos, and that if the government found out, they would definitely monitor him, especially in the apocalypse era, where awakened ones had to be carefully watched. Lisa questions why Ryo suddenly zoned out, but tells him not to worry, as she wouldn't mention it again and could even hypnotize herself or something like that. Ryo tells her not to overdo it since she is important to him, surprising Lisa with his bold words. Ryo says that's not what he meant, but Lisa tells him to rest for now since she is heading to the battle hall. Before Lisa leaves, Ryo asks if anything strange happened at the academy when they reported about Kai and Jin. Lisa says that everyone was shocked, but in any case, they were furious with the two. Ryo says that's good, and Lisa tells him not to worry since she will be back later. Outside the room, Lisa closes the door and looks down, feeling a bit sad. In a building in the city, a butler reports the details of the recent incident in the domain. The man asks how the officials could believe it was just luck that the C-rank awakened ones died, while 2 F-ranks survived, and questions when his intuition has ever been wrong, ordering someone to investigate the two. Back at Ryo's house, he reflects that he didn't want to worry Koyuki, so he left immediately after that. Koyuki welcomes him with open arms inside the house, and says she is happy that Ryo is safe. Facing the mirror, Ryo reflects that since he leveled up, in just half a month, all his combat injuries have healed. He obtained Psychic Attack in his last battle, and his second basic ability was also unlocked, so he reads the details of the skill. The ability Vitality Transfer absorbs energy from all living things around the target, including himself, to restore vitality. Ryo thinks this is incredible because if he is injured, he can heal himself using the living things around him. However, he quickly grabs the cube and thinks he should try selling it first. Items obtained in the field can be sold to national specialized institutions, but to avoid extra attention, Ryo decides to use the black market. Even without the apocalypse, the place already seemed ready for it, and Ryo tells a woman that he wants to sell an energy stone. She asks him to write down his banking information. Ryo writes his account number on a piece of paper, and the attendant starts typing on her computer. Then the boy feels his phone vibrate, surprised when he looks at the notification, because 50 million yen had been deposited into his account. He questions whether that amount is correct, asking the attendant if there was a mistake with the zeros, but she tells him that the stone he brought was very valuable, and if he doesn't want to sell it, they can start an instant refund process. Ryo says it's fine and thanks the attendant. On the street, he reflects that it was a lot of money, and that he no longer had to worry about his financial situation. So he decides that he will move to a better room and buy a new phone. Imagining himself and Koyuki moving into a spacious house and thinking that Koyuki would love it. But this wasn't good because when the apocalypse came, everything would become worthless, and he really needed to improve his abilities to get medicine for Koyuki. The attendant hands him a blue dagger and says it is an elemental knife, which increases attack speed and power. After some time, at the battle hall, Ryo sees a sign stating that the hall has been relocated. He wonders about this as Lisa hadn't mentioned anything, but he notices that his sensory control has become stronger, and he can feel a murderous intent coming from inside. Lisa is on the ground, injured, pleading and saying that it's true. But a fighter prepares his ability and says he will burn her to ashes for lying, striking the ground while aiming at Lisa. The fighter is surprised by this turn of events, and Lisa asks why Rio is there, while the boy questions if she is okay, because she said the battle hall members hadn't changed their attitude, but that had been a lie. Lisa apologizes and says she didn't want to worry Rio, but the fighter only asks who the one that saved Lisa is, and one of the members informs Goda that Rio joined while he was away, and that he was one of the F ranks who entered alongside Kai and the others. Goda questions if these two were responsible for Kai and the others' failure, saying this was the perfect moment. And the dojo members say that Rio is definitely an F rank, as his ability is vine manipulation, claiming he would make a good gardener. But Rio simply places Lisa on a bench, and the girl asks what he is going to do. The boy tells her not to worry and to leave this to him, while reflecting that the levels of new awakeners are uncertain, but their information is recorded by the government and used to find allies. The last time he went to the battle hall, he was an F rank, but now he had a higher level. Goda was a C rank, and the two students were D rank. Reo questions whether Goda would threaten the weak and proposes a bet. If Goda loses, he must stop humiliating Lisa. Goda mocks him, asking if he really wants to fight them and if he's crazy, but Rio asks if he's scared. The trainer falls for the provocation and gets angry, saying they would do it, but that Rio shouldn't expect them to go easy on him, no matter how injured he got. And Rio replies that it's not a problem. The dojo members whisper among themselves, saying that Goda is stronger than Kai, and that Rio is going to pay with his life, while Lisa reflects that Rio doesn't act impulsively, so he must have a plan to challenge Goda, wondering if an F rank could really defeat a C rank. One of the D rank students says that for an F rank like Rio, Goda wouldn't even need to move, so he would defeat him himself. Rio tells him to come at him and try, while pulling out his knife. The student charges at Rio, saying he will show the power of a D rank awaken, but Rio simply dodges the attacks while staring at him, evading to the side. The student's punch lands against the wall. Rio reflects that it was a great punch and wonders if the student is some kind of strength-based awakened, but the student asks if Rio will keep running away as he turns to kick. Rio appears behind him and says no, because he was just waiting for an opportunity, then attempts a slash. However, his hands are blocked by Goda's student. The student says that Rio is fast, but that alone won't be enough to defeat him. Lisa reflects that the difference in ranks isn't something that awakened ones can easily overcome. After all, Rio is fast, but if they can stop his attacks, he won't be able to counterattack. Rio questions if the student thinks he is just fast, while reflecting that all of his abilities have leveled up, then slaps the student across the face. The student is shocked as blood drips from his nose, falling to the ground and losing to Rio. Lisa is astonished by what just happened. Goda wonders how an F rank awakened was able to send a D rank flying with a single hit, questioning if it was the knife's power or some item. Rio prepares for battle and calls for the next opponent. Then a fighter appears behind him and says that if Rio is confident in his speed, he should try to catch him. Rio turns to slash, but the fighter disappears before the knife can reach him. The fighter says he's there to confuse Rio, hitting the boy's face and making him bleed. The fighter asks how Rio plans to win if he can't even locate him. That was Rio's chance to retreat, but instead he dodges another strike. The fighter then says that if Rio kneels and begs, he'll let him go. But Rio reflects that this opponent doesn't have a speed ability, but rather the ability to teleport. In that case, he needs to pinpoint his location. With his detection skill, he can see other things as well, while the fighter comments that Rio seems quite stubborn. Rio targets the whirl above the fighter's head and says he found him throwing his knife toward it. The spectators wonder what Rio is doing by throwing the knife like that, questioning if it's a reckless attack. But Lisa explains that's not the case. Thus, Rio manages to slash the fighter's chest with his knife. The opponent falls to the ground, groaning in pain from the strike. Rio declares that was the second to fall and another victory for him. The crowd questions how this is possible, wondering if he has a draining ability. But Goda steps forward, saying that things are getting interesting. But he will teach Rio that no matter how incredible the item, it won't make a difference in power. Then he charges, saying that to a C rank, an F rank is nothing but an ant. Rio, however, blocks the attack with his knife. He reflects that he could dodge it. Goda says he isn't done yet, causing massive destruction that devastates the dojo's floor. Lisa calls out to Rio after the attack. In the rubble, Rio reflects that Goda is strong and that there's no comparison between him and the two D ranks. Then, Goda extends his hand and says that F rank trash should know its place. Rio is startled by the incoming attack, but manages to dodge the energy blast, while reflecting that if that last attack had hit him, he would have already lost. Goda asks if Rio really thinks he can dodge forever as he launches another blast, but Rio ducks to avoid the strikes, while reflecting that this isn't good and that he needs to find Goda's weakness. Ryo notices that during Goda's attacks, especially the first and fifth ones, his body overflows with power, unlike the other times. Then he realizes there are fluctuations in the energy and wonders if that means Goda has used his last attack and that his energy is weakening. Therefore, if Ryo is right, his next attack will be different. Goda then prepares an energy ball, saying he will end this. But he is surprised when he looks at Ryo, wondering if he has gone insane since he wouldn't be able to dodge this blow. Ryo reflects that, just as he thought, the power of this attack is much weaker, and that he can survive it. Thus, he jumps as high as possible and prepares to strike with his knife. Goda wonders how an F rank could generate such a murderous intent, stumbling on the ground due to his own fear, and falling right after. The dagger is embedded beside Goda's head. Ryo says that this seems to be his victory, and Goda asks if Ryo is insane for charging at him so recklessly. The boy replies that he is not, because everything he did was to survive. Goda's students may be C and D rank, but they have never risked their lives in a real fight, turning around and saying that they were the weak ones here. Goda curses as Ryo turns his back, and one of the students shouts for them to completely defeat him. But Lisa warns Ryo to be careful. Ryo is startled when he sees what's happening, as the strong student charges at him with a punch, while the stealthy one attacks from behind using his teleportation. Ryo falls to the ground right after, but Goda strikes him with a blast of electricity, pressing him against the ground. Goda asks who the weak one is now, saying that Ryo shouldn't think too highly of himself just because he controlled the fight for a moment. Lisa prepares to attack Goda with fire, but one of the trainers restrains Lisa and tells her this is their fight and she shouldn't interfere. Lisa shouts that it was supposed to be a one-on-one fight and that they were cowards for fighting 3 against an F rank. Goda questions if that could really be considered cowardice. Then the trainer holding Lisa shouts to the audience, asking if they weren't fighting fairly. Goda says that he didn't want to take Ryo's life, but in battles between awakened ones, accidents happen and people can end up seriously injured. Ryo reflects that he needs to use psychic attack against him, then activates the ability. Goda's eyes turn completely white after being struck by the attack. Then he questions what just happened, trapped in an illusion, asking what was going on and where Ryo had gone. But then he sees the giant serpent in front of him. Ryo appears behind Goda and says that this is the same giant serpent that defeated Kai, and that just one small bite would be enough to take him down. The serpent charges at Goda and bites him. Goda screams in pain as he is hit, begging Ryo not to come closer and to stay away, while pleading for help from everyone in the battle hall. Lisa wonders why Goda suddenly let go of Ryo, and judging by his reaction, it seemed like he was seeing something terrifying. The strong student asks what is happening to Goda, while the stealthy one urges him to snap out of it. Meanwhile, Ryo reflects that this is psychic attack, and it seems even stronger than he expected. The 2 students charge at Ryo, demanding to know what he did to Goda, and vowing not to forgive him. But Ryo can barely move due to his injuries, so he reflects that he has never tried it before, but now is the time to use his other ability. Since waking up in the hospital, he had been using detection to grow stronger and had trained near trees and the ground to hear their breathing. So he strikes the ground with his ability. The entire place shakes and the students panic, wondering what's happening as it feels like an earthquake. Everyone rushes to get out of the area. The D-rank strength user's hands are cut by Ryo's energy, while the stealthy one's legs are pierced by the boy's knife. Lisa and the trainer are on the ground, stunned by the scene. Then Ryo pins Goda against the wall and says that in a battle between awakened ones, people sometimes misjudge strength and end up injured, repeating Goda's own words. Ryo wounds Goda's shoulder with his knife, stabbing him multiple times with his dagger, leaving the fighter on the ground, badly hurt. Ryo levels up twice, and since he has now reached level 15, he is finally able to enter a significant domain, and he mentally thanks the system for that. But his thoughts are interrupted by Lisa's embrace. Lisa says she was worried, but Ryo assures her that he's fine and that he also survived, before collapsing into Lisa's arms once again. Ryo apologizes, saying he feels dizzy, and Lisa tells him it's okay, that he can lean on her. Meanwhile, the dojo's trainer wonders how a rookie like Ryo could have defeated Goda, and the spectators question whether Ryo is really an F rank, since Goda was one of the strongest in the battle hall. The butler, however, reflects that the president was right. Ryo is not an ordinary person, so he needs to return and report this immediately. Ryo looks back and wonders if it was just his imagination, because he felt something strange coming from that direction. But an old man arrives and asks what they were doing to destroy the battle hall like that. Ryo questions who he is, and Lisa says he is the owner of the battle hall. He rarely shows up, and this is the first time Ryo has seen him. And apparently, the old man's son is getting married, and he wants to sell the hall. If that happens, the F ranks will need to find a new place again. Ryo looks at Lisa, who is downcast about the whole situation. The hall owner approaches, saying that this is a clear breach of contract, and that with this damage, no one will buy the place, Therefore, they must pay for it. The trainer says it wasn't them, but rather Ryo and Lisa who destroyed the hall in a dispute, and that the compensation should come from them. But Lisa yells at Noguchi not to twist things like that. Noguchi asks if he said anything wrong and reflects that since Goda was defeated, he would be the next target, so in that case, he should shift the responsibility onto them. But Ryo steps forward and asks how much he wants for the building. The hall owner says he would sell it for 30 million yen. The boy agrees to the sale, while reflecting that this would leave enough money to renovate the place, so it was fine. Surprising everyone listening to the conversation, Noguchi tells Ryo not to be arrogant, wanting to know where he would get 30 million. But Ryo asks the owner if he has time after this because, if possible, he wants to finalize the contract along with Lisa. Lisa, surprised, asks why she is included. The boy explains that the battle hall will belong to her from now on, shocking Noguchi with that decision. Ryo says that this way, no one will be able to look down on her, and if they don't follow the rules, she can simply kick them out. Then, the two leave while Noguchi remains disappointed behind them. Outside the hall, Lisa asks if this is really true, but Ryo just coughs up blood due to his injuries. The girl says she will hurry a little more since they are already close to the tree. Then Ryo grabs onto the tree, activating vitality transfer with his hands, surprising Lisa, who is beside him, making her wonder if that is his healing ability, because it seems as if he and the tree have become one. Ryo thanks the tree after absorbing its vitality, then asks Lisa what she was saying before. Lisa asks why she should be the owner if Ryo was the one paying for the hall, saying she wouldn't accept it so easily. Ryo responds that she knows how to use the hall better and would be the best person to manage it because, with that place, she could do many things. Lisa then asks what those things would be. The boy says that she could recruit people based on character rather than rank, creating a group with people she truly trusts. He reflects that, looking back at his previous life, Lisa gathered awakened ones through her charisma and leadership to form a team. Even as an F rank, she became a leader. But he heard that the group had deep trust and faced dangerous domains together, with people following Lisa wherever she went. So if Lisa controlled the battle hall, things would be amazing since no one knows when their second awakening might happen. Lisa asks if Ryo would like to do this together with her. Ryo apologizes and says he can't help with that because he has something waiting for him. Lisa asks if there is someone waiting for him. Ryo replies that he gave his life to her, and that because of her presence he is alive. Lisa says she understands, and states that she will take care of the battle hall on her own, and that Ryo should focus on what he needs to do. Then she asks if Ryo will visit often, and he says yes, since he needs to train after everything. Lisa says she will be waiting, and Ryo says goodbye, telling her he will head home for now and see her later. The girl nods while reflecting that she knows it's wrong, but she can't give up on him. Inside Ryo's house, he removes his kimono while reflecting that he wants to go to the domain now, but he can't, because the system told him he couldn't enter a domain before level 15, and that if he tried, he would be ejected. Ryo deduces that reaching level 15 doesn't guarantee he can complete the domain, only that he can survive in it. So joining an official guild is the safest option. But then he hears coughing coming from Koyuki's room and realizes she is awake. He approaches the door, calling out to his sister, only to be shocked by what he sees. Koyuki is coughing up blood while lying in bed, and she says she will clean it up quickly before her older brother sees it. Ryo steps away from the door and thinks about his sister. He reflects that he would stay a little longer and level up because he needed the antidote to make his sister healthy again. Koyuki leaves the room feeling a bit dizzy, but she notices her brother sitting, and he asks if she had already gotten up, as he had just grabbed a glass of water due to thirst. Koyuki reflects that luckily her brother hadn't seen her like that, and Ryo asks how she was feeling, but the girl says that she had been feeling very well these past few days. Ryo says that was good, and that he had noticed it, and he tells her that he would be going to a domain in 2 days and would be away for a while, so he asks the neighbor to help her with meals. Koyuki questions if the neighbor didn't hate doing that. Ryo reassures her, saying not to worry because now the neighbor was happier to help, and he reflects that it was because he paid her. Koyuki says she understood and that she would stay in bed to avoid causing trouble for Ryo. But Ryo tells her she didn't need to worry about causing trouble because she was his hope, and he promises that she would get better. Koyuki says yes, and that her brother should return safely from the domain, and Ryo agrees, saying he had gotten stronger. Then he changes the subject, asking if Koyuki was hungry and what she would like to eat. But Ryo is surprised when he looks ahead, seeing energy emanating from Koyuki, as she says she would like fried rice. Koyuki notices her brother distracted and calls his attention, but Ryo says it was nothing, that he would make the food right away, and he reflects that he saw magical energy coming from Koyuki's body, but it must have been a hallucination from using abilities. At the president's building, the butler informs that he has completed his report. The president questions whether Ryo had defeated a Class C and used elemental abilities and psychic control, wanting to know what else he could do, and the butler says that Ryo had just registered a guild and that he planned to enter the Karam domain with a group in 2 days. Then the president asks about Karam, and the butler wonders if the president was familiar with it. But the president says it was an area with dark energy, and that if someone got close, they would be suffocated by an aura, and only high-level awakened individuals could sense the anomaly. Then he says he couldn't wait because he wanted to see if Ryo would return alive, and he wanted to witness it with his own eyes. 2 days later, Ryo stands before the energy and reflects that this was the Karam domain. It seemed that some ingredients for the antidote were hidden there, and he needed to obtain them no matter what. One of the members asks if Ryo was the F rank who wanted to enter the domain with them. Ryo agrees and introduces himself. A group member approaches and says that the domain required at least C rank to enter and that an F class would just be defeated, so Ryo should go home. Ryo says that he needed an opportunity to train and that he had entered domains many times before, assuring that he wouldn't slow the man down. The man questions where that confidence came from and warns that if Ryo was in danger and needed help, he wouldn't assist him. But Ryo agrees and says he would take care of himself. But a girl approaches and apologizes, saying that the man had a sharp tongue and that Ryo shouldn't take it personally. Ryo says he understands and reflects that people like this were easier to deal with than those who put themselves above others, like Kai. The girl introduces herself as Yuna, a B-rank healer, and says that the man was Takudo, also B rank and the leader of the group. Besides that, the group had several C ranks, so it wasn't a problem for Ryo to join. Yuna says that they wouldn't be clearing the domain this time because they were looking for someone, and that's why the captain hesitated to accept Ryo. The boy asks about this person. The girl says it was her senior, who had entered the domain alone half a month ago and still hadn't returned. Ryo agrees and reflects that even an awakened individual would struggle to survive for a month. Yuna says she thought the same, but a week ago, she received a message where the person said for them to come and find him in the Karam domain. Inside the domain, it looked like an abandoned house. Ryo wonders where the ingredient was because the system should be able to detect something nearby, so he wanted to know why he hadn't found it. Yuna says that it was a C-rank domain, so they would be fine, but she asks Ryo to stay close and not wander off. The boy apologizes, but he questions how she knew the domain was C-rank, wanting to know if she had a level orb, and Yuna replies that it was too expensive for them. Then she asks if Ryo could see the man ahead of them because he had the ability to sense magic, and thanks to him, they could determine the domain's level and choose accordingly. Ryo says that this is how it worked and asks if they felt anything strange in the domain, reflecting that he sensed a presence entering the domain. Yuna questions what he means by strange, and Ryo says he was just asking randomly, but then he turns his face away. The member who can sense magic says that something is coming from the front left. They see several mutated brown bears. Takudo orders everyone to get ready. The group members prepare their magic. The brown bear roars at the group members, but it quickly lowers itself when it senses the incoming magic. Then it charges towards Yuna and Ryo with full force. Yuna prepares fire magic in her hand, but Takudo jumps over it, declaring that he will be the bear's opponent. He slices it in half with fire magic. Another bear rushes toward Takudo. However, he turns and cuts it down with his sword. Ryo reflects that they had great teamwork and were in sync, and that Takudo was the strongest as expected of the leader. He wonders how incredible Lisa's group will become in the future, but he realizes that when Lisa evolves to level S, her group will be the strongest in the world, and he couldn't tell Lisa about this, wondering if he could change the future where she meets her end. Ryo, however, is startled when he looks to the side. A girl warns Ryo that something is coming behind him. Ryo summons his knife while facing the brown bear. Takudo prepares his sword for an aerial attack. He drives it into the mutant bear's head. Then he lands near Ryo. Ryo comments that it seemed like he had no chance to act. Takudo questions if he didn't tell him to stay behind them, because an F rank like him couldn't just stand there in front of the monster's attack, and if he had been slower, he would be on the ground right now. Then he steps back, saying that he shouldn't have brought someone like Ryo along. Ryo reflects that Takudo was right in his reprimand. Yuna asks what Ryo is thinking because he sensed the danger, grabbed his equipment before the warning, and was the first to notice the bear approaching, and she reflects that he wasn't as weak as he seemed. They continue moving through the domain. Takudo cuts down all the bears with his sword, and even burns a Cerberus in a group battle. Yuna heals a wounded group member who apologizes for worrying her. Ryo reflects that there was no doubt. Takudo and the others were quickly defeating the monsters they encountered, but it seemed too easy. Takudo states that it's strange because the day has passed, and they have only encountered weak monsters, making it feel unlike a C-rank dungeon. A group member comments that their senior would survive something like this, and Takudo tells them to stay sharp since there's a chance they might encounter a big monster. Ryo reflects on the lack of signs regarding the antidote ingredient and that his strange feeling was getting stronger. He wonders why he was running so fast. Then he places his hand in the water to feel its flow, and he reflects that he sensed a strange force there and wanted to know if it was the ingredient for the antidote. Takuto pulls him away, telling him to stay away from it. Ryo, however, tells Takuto to let him go, surprising the group members with his reaction, but Yuna tells them to focus on that, because a mist suddenly started to form. The members complain about the mist being thick and draining their strength, though they feel nothing else. Takuto asks Kenji if he senses anything, but Kenji says his senses haven't activated. Ryo deduces that if the river water has magical energy that he felt, then he finds a purple energy at the bottom. He moves forward as Takuto questions what he is doing, calling Ryo an idiot right after, and orders the group to move so they don't get separated, to which Kenji agrees. The mist starts to thin. Then Ryo notices that the magic has disappeared. Takuto states that he won't let this slide, but he is surprised when he sees what Ryo is looking at. They see a cave as the mist fades away. Yuna tells them to pay attention, questioning if that isn't their senior's sword. Takuto orders them to split up and search the surroundings, and Kenji agrees. But a voice comes from the cave, asking who is there because he is inside. Takuto informs the group that a voice is coming from the cave. Then they climb the walls, finding their senior lying on the ground. Takuto asks if he is alright, and Yuna says she will begin treating him. Ryo wonders how it was possible for someone to survive in the domain for this long, especially with so many injuries, and the magic he had sensed had vanished, making him question whether it disappeared or was hidden. But Ryo is surprised as he turns around, looking at the grass growing inside the cave. He reflects that the system said he was close to the ingredients, so now he could sense them naturally and finally understood what that meant. Thus he sees a red plant on the ground, but the flower withers soon after. Ryo questions what happened since he did nothing, so there must be another cause. Picking up the flower and noticing that only one petal remained, he wonders if it hadn't fully bloomed yet. But he realizes that, despite looking like an ordinary flower, it was covered in blood, and it wasn't human blood. The senior of the group says he knew everyone would find him, and Yuna thanks the gods that he is free from mortal danger. Ryo questions what exactly happened there. The senior asks who Ryo is, and Yuna responds that he is an F-rank awakened who came to the domain to train with them. The senior says that Ryo shouldn't be there, as the boss was cunning, used the darkness to wear them down, and attacked stealthily. He retreated while fighting but ended up ambushed. Ryo asks if the domain's boss is still there, looking for an opportunity. The senior agrees and says that he can sense it since he is a B-rank awakened and can control part of the damage. Ryo wonders if that's what the blood on the flower meant, but if it was the boss's blood, the flower should have fully bloomed. The system gives Ryo a hint, informing him that he has acquired the method to obtain one of the ingredients. Then he says that's it. If he defeats the boss, he can obtain the ingredient. Takuto holds onto his senior and asks why he entered the domain alone, and the senior explains that he waited for his wounds to heal but couldn't find the boss again. Yuna grabs his arm and says that his life is more important than anything else, and Takuto adds that he should rest. But the senior says he managed to wound the boss, and now they can defeat it. Rei reflects that he should be grateful for this, but he has a bad feeling. If the senior knew the boss was inside the cave, he questions why he stayed there to recover, as that would be even more dangerous. However, Takuto says they will defeat the boss together. Yuna thanks Ryo while picking up the fallen sword from the ground, and says she couldn't leave him alone, then asks if Ryo would like to go with them to defeat the boss. Ryo in turn questions if she wasn't a little too excited about it. The girl responds that her senior was always cautious and put his life first, but now he seemed eager to prepare a counterattack instead. But she wonders if she is overthinking it, since if the senior made this decision, he must be confident. Ryo asks if that sword belonged to him, and Yuna confirms, saying he would never leave it behind inside the cave. She thought they would always be together. The boy then questions whether the senior regained consciousness and decided to defeat the boss since he didn't seem to have looked for his sword. Yuna is surprised and asks why he didn't look for the sword, as that had never happened before. But the senior appears behind her, asking what was wrong. Yuna turns around and says it's nothing, that she was just returning his sword. The senior takes the sword and thanks the girl. Then he approaches Ryo, saying that he is an F-rank awakened, and that after this, they would find the boss, but Ryo shouldn't be afraid. The boy agrees. Thus, the senior explains that they need to move forward since the boss is southwest of the cave, and they should finish it quickly. Ryo reflects that this person is strange and is hiding something, but concludes that he must have his reasons, as his only goal is to defeat the boss. The group follows the path to the boss. Yuna reflects that her senior is acting strangely within the domain and doesn't seem worried, but she wonders what this uneasiness inside her is. Then she trips over a rock. Ryo catches her before she falls to the ground, and says that, as a healer, she can't let her guard down for even a second. Then he asks if Yuna is okay, since they are about to face the boss. Yuna reflects that Ryo is right, and that this isn't the time for worries, as her priority is to defeat the boss and ensure everyone returns safely. But she wonders how the boy remains so calm, being the first to notice the senior's sword and seemingly having a knack for finding the right direction. Then she questions whether Ryo is really F rank, but he responds that this is the information on his certificate and that she confirmed it herself earlier. Yuna agrees but reflects that certificates aren't so reliable now, as ever since the domains appeared last year, there has been a chance of errors in the records. And with this extraordinary perception, Ryo was at least at level C. He thinks that Yuna was quite sharp since she seemed to realize that he was concealing his strength. Takudo asks how his senior is feeling, and he responds that he is better but still hasn't fully recovered. However, he is relieved to see his allies. The swordsman tells him not to worry because he will give it his all. The senior says that both of them were at level B, but Takudo had natural talent and had already surpassed him, so having him by his side put him at ease, and he thanks him. Ryo comments that everyone seemed comfortable with the senior, and Yuna says that the group was formed with him as the center, and that when no one knew what to do, he guided them, especially Takudo, who had been with the senior since he awakened, like a master and disciple. But the senior didn't like being called master. Time passes as the group walks, until they finally reach an open field. The senior asks if that was the place where the monster was, and Kenji tells everyone to be careful. A bird appears from above, and Ryo notices its presence. Then, they realize that it is a giant eagle. The senior warns them to pay attention to its wings. The eagle creates a tornado of wind and launches it toward the group, hitting everyone and pushing them away from the center. Ryo reflects on whether the creature can create whirlwinds, as that would make it troublesome to fight, but he curses it because in this scenario, the others wouldn't be able to launch fire attacks, so they should fight it with their strength, and the senior tells Yuna to strengthen Takudo. Yuna prepares an ability directed at the swordsman. Then, the senior orders Takudo to confront the creature, and the man agrees. The eagle swoops down in a dive toward Takudo, hitting the ground right after. Takudo slashes the giant eagle with his sword, striking the creature's back, which begins to release energy. Ryo notices something strange beside him, seeing a sinister energy spreading through the area. He steps back, avoiding the energy, and wonders if the eagle summoned the creatures this way and if it was planning to catch them from beneath the mist. Ryo says that won't happen, drawing his dagger. Then he charges toward the shadow bear, dissipating the monster's energy. Ryo continues slashing multiple times, releasing his energy after finishing the attacks. The system notifies him that he has leveled up. Ryo reflects that he gained experience just from defeating a mutant creature, and that this domain was not normal. But he quickly notices a bear stomping on Yuna. Yuna cries out in pain while begging for help. Ryo slashes the bear with his knife, causing blood to float in front of Yuna. He approaches and asks if Yuna is okay, and the girl responds that she is but lost her strength for a moment. Then she wonders how Ryo defeated that monster with just one attack. Ryo tells her to rest because there were still other monsters around. Yuna then asks about the others. The boy says they were probably fine. Yuna wonders why Ryo wasn't affected by the mist, and also knew that there were monsters around. Kenji is on the ground, being dragged by two panthers, but their heads are severed before they can attack him. Kenji asks if he was saved. Ryo continues slashing all the panthers nearby. Then, another group member questions what happened and how they suddenly lost, wanting to know if their leader or the senior was there. Ryo reflects that it was strange because he couldn't sense the presence of the others. Then he wonders how much longer the mist would last because the eagle was waiting to attack and he needed to lure it in. However, he hears a scream and turns, realizing it was Takudo's voice, but the shadow energy surrounds him and grows even stronger. Ryo notices that the eagle has appeared near Takudo. Takudo is surrounded by panthers while wielding his sword. The eagle moves in behind the focused swordsman. Ryo appears and warns him that the eagle is behind him, but the eagle quickly charges at the swordsman. Takudo, with a smile, simply waits for the attack. A rock shatters along the way, as the eagle strikes Takudo's back, which was covered in stones. Ryo wonders if that was a form of physical enhancement and is surprised by Takudo's incredible ability since he intentionally placed himself in front of the eagle to lure it in. Then Takudo charges his sword with energy, attempting to pierce the giant eagle's face. While declaring that this was the moment for the eagle to fall, he slashes the creature's face, but the impact repels him. Takudo crashes to the ground from the force of the eagle's blow. Ryo moves toward him, but the eagle grabs the swordsman with its beak, flying away from the mist, making it impossible for Ryo to follow her. Thus he questions whether she was trying to take Takudo's life by dropping him from the sky. Ryo charges his dagger with energy and throws it toward the eagle. The dagger becomes enveloped in the boy's yellowish energy and pierces the eagle's chest as it soars through the air. The eagle barely manages to stay airborne after being struck. Kenji notices that the mist has cleared, and another group member realizes that their leader is being carried by the eagle. Ryo tells someone to use fire against them, so Kenji prepares a fire spell along with another member of the group, shooting at the eagle, which falls from the sky, and it releases Takudo from its beak. Takudo crashes to the ground, defeated by the eagle, and shortly after, the creature falls beside him. Kenji approaches, asking if his leader is alright, and Yuna tells everyone not to move because she is about to heal him. Takudo asks what happened to the eagle, and Kenji tells him it's on the ground and praises his leader. Ryo mentally thanks the fact that everyone is safe. Then he reflects that, with this, the eagle's blood would soon be used as an antidote to help the flower grow. However, Ryo notices something strange. The senior had appeared suddenly, but no matter how much Ryo searched, he couldn't find him now. Then the senior smiles while staring at the group. An energy core forms above the eagle, and the senior tries to grab it, saying he has finally obtained it. Ryo realizes that something is off because when a domain boss is defeated, the energy core shatters instantly, so he wonders why it hasn't broken yet. Even after leveling up, he hasn't felt any break in the barrier surrounding the area. Then, the boy notices what is happening. Seeing the flower grow, he wonders why another incomplete flower is blooming when the eagle's blood hasn't been spread yet, because the one standing there should have been the senior, who now approaches the crystal. A sudden burst of energy illuminates Ryo. Takudo asks what that was, and a group member says he will check it out. Then he approaches the senior, asking what is happening, but Ryo tells him not to get closer. Thus, the energy begins to envelop the group member, surprising Ryo, Kenji, Takudo, and Yuna. Because the group member is pierced by the senior throws him aside with his sword. Then Takudo shouts, asking what he is doing. The senior begins to surround himself with purple energy, blasting everyone around him away. Takudo reflects that this is an intense magical energy and that he cannot move. The senior questions what is wrong and why Takudo isn't moving, but then orders him to show respect because he is speaking to his senior, and asks why he is resisting and if he plans to keep enduring this. Takudo suffers as he is choked by the senior, but the senior says this is boring, and that in that case he will simply send Takudo to the afterlife as well. However, he is surprised to notice something. Ryo is above him, preparing an aerial attack with his dagger, and then he strikes the ground, separating the two. The boy stands in front of the senior while protecting Takudo, and the senior questions how an F rank could move under his magical pressure. Yuna asks what happened to their senior, and Kenji wants to know what he is doing. But Ryo tells him that this is not their senior, shocking the three group members who start questioning who he could be. Yuna quickly realizes and says there is no other explanation, and Ryo confirms her suspicion, because he had already thought about this before, ever since he saw the first flower. The blood did not belong to the domain boss but to the senior, and easily discarding his favorite equipment, attacking without thinking, behaving differently than before, and even appearing in the dense mist were all signs that this was a false senior. Ryo says that if his theory is correct, the man standing before him is the true domain boss. The man agrees and says that since Ryo has discovered the truth, there is no longer any need to maintain this appearance. Then he begins to transform, saying that he will now show his true form, becoming a purple monster and declaring that this form is much more fitting. Ryo reflects that it is a humanoid monster, but they were only supposed to appear after a year. He wonders how it emerged before its time, and whether they had failed to find one last time. Yuna questions how the monster can speak their language, and Takudo asks where their real senior is. The monster responds that their companion is right there, because after descending to the land, he lost half of his precious energy core to the eagle, and then he encountered the senior at that moment. They fought, and in the end, the monster won, but it struck him easily. Then it wondered why not use that human to recover the half that had been taken from it. And so, the monster took over the senior's body. After devouring the body, only bones remained. It then planned to lure the group, seeking contact with all of them afterward, but they arrived slower than expected, and the eagle found and attacked it again, so it had no choice but to remain in the cave. However, it obtained its full energy core, and in that domain was the strongest. Yuna concludes that this meant their senior was already gone. Takudo curses the monster and says he will take its life, but Ryo orders them to take Takudo and evacuate because he would handle things from there. Takudo questions what he could possibly do, and Ryo responds that he will defeat the enemy before him. The monster comments that those were bold words. Takudo asks how he plans to defeat it when he is only an F rank, but Ryo says he will do it alone. Yuna agrees and says she trusts him. Takudo questions that trust, but the girl tells Kenji to help her carry Takudo. Takudo orders them to let him go, saying they were planning to leave Ryo to certain defeat. The monster remarks that humans love to play the hero, but in the end, they are all defeated by it, so it doesn't matter. Ryo charges without saying a word, clashing his dagger against the monster's sword. The monster is surprised by the boy's strength and attempts to strike him with the sword, but Ryo dodges. Ryo reflects that he already possessed the level assigned by the system, which meant he had enough strength to fight the domain boss. Furthermore, he was still evolving. Then he delivers an attack that wounds the monster's face. Kenji comments that Ryo was truly making a difference. Takuto, however, reflects that he himself couldn't even match his sword against that monster and wonders if Ryo's skill level had already surpassed his own. The monster comments that it had heard F rank was the weakest of all, no different from an ordinary human. Then it wonders how Ryo was able to fight and injure it, realizing that the boy had been hiding his true strength all along. It says that this is getting interesting because a one-sided victory is boring, and it would be much more entertaining if Ryo desperately begged for help. That way, the hunt could begin. Ryo questions if it was planning to use some kind of ability. The monster unleashes a sonic blast from its mouth, hitting Ryo, who tries to defend himself. Kenji complains that it feels like his head is about to split in half, and Yuna instructs him to cover his ears. Rei reflects that this was no ordinary sonic attack, and that, at this rate, it would destroy his organs, so he needed to stop the monster. He strikes the ground and releases his energy, using sense control, causing vines to sprout and bind the monster to the ground. The monster questions how Ryo can even control wood. Takuto admits that it almost defeated him. Then, the monster warns that Ryo was being too arrogant for thinking he could keep it trapped forever. But as it looks around, it realizes that Ryo has disappeared. The boy appears above it and says that if he could stop its movements for even a moment, that would be enough to defeat it, delivering a deep slash to the monster's back. The monster curses the boy after being struck, and declares that it will make Ryo lose his life. Growing wings on its back, it begins preparing multiple blasts to attack. Ryo realizes this is bad because the monster has become even stronger, but he can't let this pass, so he charges again, defending against the blasts with his arms while holding his dagger. Ryo moves closer and closer to the monster's glowing energy, but then he is struck in the stomach. Yuna screams for Ryo, calling out to her ally, but Ryo says it's not over yet. He spits blood, wondering if the monster had poisoned its sword. Then, the monster grabs Ryo's head with one hand, telling him not to worry because the poison is fatal. It would cover him in despair before slowly finishing him off. And so, the monster takes flight with Ryo, saying that this was the price for challenging it without knowing his place. The monster flies higher and higher, saying that this is the perfect punishment because if it drops Ryo from here, his bones will shatter into pieces. Then it states that the view will be spectacular. After that, it lets go of the boy from its hands. Ryo plummets toward the dense forest below. Yuna screams that if he falls from that height, he will definitely lose his life. Then Ryo crashes into the ground after the fall. Kenji comments that it's all over. The monster laughs, saying that Ryo was just a pathetic human, an insignificant ant, and that soon, the earth would be its paradise. Ryo questions what this means and whether demons would emerge from this domain. Then he approaches the tree with vitality absorption, touching it and absorbing the energy coming from it. Ryo says that the monster threw him into a forest without realizing that it would actually help him. Thus, he activates the beginner-level vitality transfer, absorbing the tree's energy to heal himself. Ryo is fully healed by this. The monster is shocked upon witnessing this scene, questioning what is happening, wondering why all the trees in this area have withered due to a poison. But then vines suddenly restrain the monster, wrapping around its lay and preventing it from flying any higher. Ryo rushes forward with his dagger while the monster blocks with its sword. The monster says that Ryo was stronger than expected and asks if he healed himself. Ryo remains silent as he continues attacking, trying to use psychic attack, but it fails since the monster's mental defense is higher than the skill's level. Thus, the vines that were holding it break apart. Ryo and the monster end up deep in the forest. The boy realizes that, for now, psychic attack is his only trump card, and if the monster's defense is too high, he must push it into a panic. Then, the monster decides and declares that it will cut off Ryo's head, and maybe another will grow in its place. Ryo is shocked by this, but soon replaces his surprise with a smile on his face. The monster asks why Ryo is laughing. Ryo says that the monster has used up a lot of power and asks if that energy really came from him. The monster questions this while Ryo explains that it fused with the energy core and asks if it made a mistake, because the monster should have noticed that the absorbed energy was trying to escape, and that it wouldn't be able to maintain this form for long, meaning it would soon lose its power, shocking the monster with this explanation. But Ryo simply lunges at the monster, which asks if he really thinks he can hit it with baseless theories. Ryo replies that he wants to test something. Then the boy unleashes his attack, activating psychic attack against the monster. The monster is caught off guard by this, Suddenly, it finds itself in the forest, questioning where Ryo went. Noticing that its magical power is vanishing despite having absorbed the energy core completely, it continues to deny what is happening. The monster wonders why it is reverting to the senior's form, and then realizes that its core is forming another person right in front of it. Then, the monster realizes that it can't move and wonders why its body isn't responding. And the core speaks, saying, "Food can't run away on its own," which makes it feel even hungrier, while the senior commands it not to come any closer. The core lunges toward the senior, completely terrifying the monster in battle, forcing it to cough up blood outside of the illusion. Ryo drives his dagger into the monster's heart, then channels energy into his fist, punching the creature away. The monster groans that there was no hope left and questions how it could have lost. Ryo asks what it meant by the land becoming its paradise, and wants to know if demons had already found a way to leave the domains. But the monster states that once the gate is opened, they will descend upon the land and humanity will be exterminated. The boy realizes that this means the demons need to exit through a specific point, which might be the reason why the demon tribe appeared in his past life. And the monster asks if Ryo is afraid of finding the domain gate, saying that it already knows its approximate location. Then it proposes a deal. If Ryo lets it go, it will reveal where the gate is. Ryo asks about this approximate location, which the monster mentioned was in the southeast. The monster is stunned and questions how a mere human could know that. Then Ryo drives his dagger into its chest again, saying that the monster talks too much. Thus, the monster is finally defeated. Energy begins to shatter behind it, forming a glowing pink flower. Ryo realizes that it worked. Then he takes the flower in his hand, and the system informs him that he has obtained one of 6 ingredients for the poison antidote, and that this one could also be used as an anesthetic. Ryo questions the fact that there are 6 ingredients and feels relieved that this one can be used as an anesthetic on its own. The monster calls out to Ryo in its final moments, so Ryo approaches it, and the monster thanks him for finally setting it free. Ryo questions why the monster's personality seems to have changed. Then he kneels down and asks if it is the senior speaking at this moment. And the senior replies that having someone like Ryo as an awakened is reassuring because he is the hope for the future of humanity. Ryo says that if he wanted to say his last words, he would listen to all of them, but the senior responds that with the power he had, he protected his companions and did everything he could. So he had no regrets in his life, surprising Ryo with that. The system notifies him that he has defeated the monster and leveled up. A yellowish energy core is then formed. The system informs him that he has obtained a yellow energy stone and a long sword from another world, which increases power by 100 but decreases status by the same amount. Additionally, he also gains the immunity skill, making him immune to status abnormalities. Ryo wonders if this means he is completely immune and concludes that he no longer has to worry about poison or paralysis. The system informs him that he has reached level 25 and unlocked the water manipulation skill. Ryo questions whether he can now control water in addition to earth and wood, and if, by continuing to evolve, he could unlock more elements. Then he touches the tree beside him and begins to release his internal energy. Ryo realizes that he needs to touch directly to use his abilities since he is still at the beginner level, but that this will change as he levels up. For now, he has no choice. Yuna approaches, calling Ryo out of his concentration, asking if he is hurt, as she will heal him right away. However, she is surprised when she looks at him, as he is not only completely healed but even seems better than before. Takuda looks at the defeated monster's body on the ground and apologizes to his senior for not being able to save him. Ryo says that after defeating the monster, the senior regained consciousness, and that his last words were to tell Takudo that no one is perfect and that he was never disappointed in him. Takudo starts crying upon hearing those words, denying his master's defeat while looking at the sky. The day passes inside the domain. Takudo holds the body of the fallen group member and tells Ryo that he underestimated him, apologizing for it. But Ryo says it's fine, that it happens all the time, while reflecting that hearing an honest apology was surprising. Takudo says that he will spend some time training to face future domains with more caution, and that, if Ryo doesn't find a fixed group, he can join them. Ryo agrees, bidding farewell to his new friends. Yuna asks her leader if he doesn't find it strange that Ryo is so incredible yet is still just an F rank. Takuda replies that Ryo is keeping quiet for some reason and that, thanks to him, they managed to defeat the monster, so they will keep the incident a secret. Yuna agrees and says that her leader is right. Thus, Ryo returns home and says that he has finally arrived. He goes to his sister's room, where she is sleeping. Ryo researches the domains that have emerged but finds no results in the area he is looking for. Then he wonders if the domain holding the key has not yet appeared. That would mean the monsters haven't found the door yet. Ryo may have never seen this domain in person, but there is a rumor that a mist that engulfs everything surrounds it. No one has ever conquered it, and many S-rank fighters lost their lives trying. He can't tell anyone because he is the only human who knows about this, so he wonders how he could conquer that domain alone, wondering if humanity will face extinction again, as there is no one to stop it. Koyuki, however, wakes up, and Ryo asks how she is feeling. The girl tells her brother to talk to her outside because the day is beautiful. Ryo asks how Koyuki is feeling and if she isn't sick, but Koyuki responds that she is fine because, after the anesthetic, she feels energized. Ever since she was infected, she has only been bedridden and never thought she would be able to take a walk again, so she is very happy about it. Ryo says that if it makes his sister happy, then they should take more walks together. Koyuki, however, notices something different. Seeing a portal in the middle of their garden, she wonders if that is a domain, but Ryo explains that they are outside the danger zone and won't suffer any effects. Other awakened ones will take care of it later. Koyuki says that she has had the same dream many times. In this dream, the domain doesn't disappear, the monsters keep growing, and they come out of there. Because of this, many people lose their lives, and the world turns into a true hell. Ryo says that if the world ends, he will stay by Koyuki's side because he will find a cure for her. Koyuki questions what he is talking about because if the world ends, what would be the point of curing her? The boy wonders why he forgot something so important since, even if he gathers the ingredients, if the world ends, Koyuki will lose her life again. Then she asks if her older brother isn't going to prevent the end of the world, and Ryo questions what she's talking about, since only S-rank awakened can do that. Koyuki says that's not true because she is sure that even ordinary people can do it. Ryo repeats Koyuki's words, recalling the senior's last words before he died. He says he was a hopeless fool, but then he suddenly appears in empty space and wonders where he is, while a system screen floats above him. The system says this is an isolated space for just the two of them and asks if, after hearing that, Ryo will change history and save the world. Ryo agrees and says he wants Koyuki to live in a peaceful and beautiful world, so he will stop the destruction. The system informs him that one of the ingredients for the antidote is inside the domain of the monsters from his past life, meaning Ryo has no choice but to conquer it. Ryo wonders why the system only gave this information now, but the system replies that it planned to tell him only after he had organized his thoughts. The boy says that's not fair, and the system says he could call it a smart strategy. Ryo reflects that he has to endure it since it's the system and he can't punch it. But then, Koyuki calls Ryo, asking why he is distracted. The boy says it's nothing special and asks if they can walk a little more, while suddenly looking to the side. Ryo wonders if his senses have improved again, as several awakened are approaching. Koyuki asks if something is wrong. The boy tells her they should go home for today. Koyuki agrees and says it's time for her favorite TV show. Ryo asks if he can watch it with her this time, but Koyuki says that her brother never liked the show. Koyuki suddenly looks to the side, and her expression becomes completely suspicious. The president's butler says it's strange because, according to their intel, Ryo and his sister should be there. He wonders if they noticed his presence but concludes that would be impossible unless they had extremely sharp senses from a distance. Koyuki lies down on the bed, and Ryo reflects that even though she said she would watch TV, she ended up falling asleep first, and that the anesthetic only relieved the pain, but her body was getting weaker. If he remembered correctly, the monsters would appear at the gate in 6 months. This meant that, besides finding the ingredients for the antidote, he also needed to figure out a way to prevent the world's destruction. But there wasn't much time left, and he needed to become stronger. He looks toward the door and senses presence is approaching, and he analyzes that they have come all the way to his house, wondering who they are. The men wait for Ryo to open the door. Then they knock, waiting for a response. Ryo questions their intentions for following him from the park to his home. The butler is startled that Ryo noticed his presence from such a distance, but he apologizes, introducing himself as Kosaka Yo, director of the Tawa Guild, and says that the president would like to meet Ryo. Ryo reflects on the Tawa Guild, but says he's not interested and tells them to leave. Kosaka releases energy along with the guards and says that the president instructed them to invite Ryo respectfully, but if he didn't cooperate, they would have to change their approach. Ryo asks what they're planning with that, also releasing his energy, but Kosaka says he knows Ryo's strength and that if they fight there, it would be bad for everyone else too. Koyuki continues sleeping deeply while the conversation unfolds. Ryo agrees to the terms, remembering his sister. Kosaka says it's a wise decision and leads Ryo down the path. Inside the meeting room, Kosaka informs the president that he has brought Ryo. The boy glares at the man with anger, and the president, with a cigar in his mouth, says he has finally met Ryo. Sitting at the table, he states that first he will introduce himself as Ryuji Okawa, representative of the Tawa Guild. Ryo reflects that he is quite powerful, likely an A rank, meaning Ryo wouldn't be able to defeat him in his current state. Ryuji says that the Tawa Guild was established 6 months ago, and its goal is to gather powerful awakened and maximize their abilities. Ryo repeats the word abilities, and Ryuji explains that the world will become a difficult place for ordinary people, making this the Awakened's chance to earn money, status, and honor by clearing domains. He needs a team to clear domains, and by joining the guild, Ryo can use his skills to the fullest. The boy remembers that in his past life, ordinary people like him knew about the Tawa Guild, because when the end of the world approached, they were not satisfied with just clearing domains. They began dealing with threats and invasions without caring about the weak or the common people. They threatened, and in the worst cases even took lives. And in the desolate world, they were feared as monsters. One thing Ryo would never forget was the mass massacre they committed at the end of the world. And above all, the high-ranked individuals lived lavishly while this was happening. Ryuji calls Ryo's attention, asking if something is wrong. Ryo responds that he got lost in thought but wanted to ask the president something, wondering why he approached him. Ryuji says it was because of the Karam domain clearance, wanting to know how Ryo defeated the domain boss. Ryo reflects that with his current strength, he couldn't take on an entire guild, so for now, it was best to keep his distance from them. He says there must be some mistake as he is just an F rank and doesn't have that kind of strength. He only managed to defeat the monster thanks to the other group members. Ryuji asks if the domain boss was that much different from the others. Ryo explains that it was strong and transformed to the point of having wings, but he didn't know other details because he was too scared. The guild leader bursts into laughter, and Ryo asks what the reason is. But Ryuji comments that it seems he hasn't gained Ryo's trust yet. Then he calls Yuna into the room. Ryo is surprised to see Yuna. Ryuji says that Yuna told him everything about how Ryo saved them and defeated the domain boss, which even B rankers couldn't face. Ryo asks if Takudo knew she was there, but the girl says she left Takudo's group, and Ryuji adds that Yuna is now the healer of the Tawa Guild. Originally, he wanted to recruit Takudo, but he was too stubborn, so they gave up. However, Yuna was smart and chose the best path for herself. Then Ryuji says that Ryo is also intelligent and will know what the best choice is. The boy looks ahead, deep in thought, and he says that it is true he defeated the domain boss, but the monster was problematic because it absorbed humans. Without Takudo, a B rank, he wouldn't have succeeded, so it was pure luck. He tells Okawa that he is just an F rank, without ambitions. He only wants to survive, but he doesn't want to join the guild. Ryuji continues smoking his cigar while observing the boy. Yuna wonders why Ryo is refusing since joining the Tawa Guild would guarantee his safety and a unique opportunity, as they usually don't recruit anyone below B rank. Ryuji says he won't force him and offers him a ride in the guild's car. Ryo thanks him as he turns to leave the room, but the guild leader calls him again, saying that if he ever changes his mind, he is free to look for him anytime. Ryo says he doubts that day will come. He reflects that the president gave up too easily, wondering if this was the same ruthless leader he knew in his past life. But in this case, it was better to keep his distance and follow his own path. Yuna asks if it's okay not to insist. The president says that Ryo has forgotten something important because, in a chaotic world, survival depends on cooperation, and living a peaceful life alone would be harder than he imagines, especially since Ryo has a younger sister. Yuna says she will talk to Ryo about it. The next day, at the black market, Ryo reflects that there is no one from the Tawa Guild, wondering if they gave up so easily. He realizes that when entering domains, this situation will keep repeating, and leaving Koyuki alone worries him, so he needs to find a way to communicate with her. Ryo asks who bought the item, but the clerk cannot reveal it. When he asks if there is another unit, she denies it, saying they only had one and it was already sold. But Lisa approaches Ryo and he recognizes her voice. The girl removes her mask and asks what Ryo is doing there. She says she came to buy something and ended up finding him. Ryo responds that he is in the same situation. She is impressed by Ryo, and the boy feels the same about her. The clerk interrupts the two, saying that if they want to flirt, they should go outside and get away from her counter. But both turn to her and say they weren't flirting, they were just friends. The clerk then reveals to Ryo that Lisa was the one who bought the item he was looking for. Then she kicks both of them out of the shop, saying they should settle this between themselves. Lisa says she isn't surprised that he is trying to keep in touch with someone and asks if it is for someone important. Ryo says he is worried about leaving Koyuki alone. The young woman thinks that, as expected, the important person was a woman, but Ryo says that Koyuki is the most important person to him and asks if Lisa could give him the communication device as he would pay whatever price she wanted. Lisa opens the box and says there's no problem. Ryo takes the artifacts in his hand and comments that they seem to consume a lot of magical energy. Lisa asks what he means, and Ryo asks if she doesn't feel it, but the girl denies it. Then the boy thinks he must have been mistaken and reflects that maybe Lisa didn't sense anything because she was a level below him or because his perception was simply too sharp. He says he would pay at least double the original price for Lisa, but she responds that Rio shouldn't pay for a gift. The boy insists that he won't let it be that way since she was the one who bought them and intended to use them. Lisa says that she had thought that if she were ever in danger inside a domain and couldn't return alive, she would like to use the item to leave her last words for someone she was thinking about. However, as she said, now that she had companions by her side, she didn't know who to give it to, and that's why she decided that Rio was the best person to keep it, since he needed it. Rio says that accepting such an expensive gift for free feels strange, and Lisa asks why he thinks that way when he saved her and left the battle hall, considering that it was a small price, and if it wasn't enough, Rio could owe her a favor. He questions what she means by that and what kind of favor it would be. The day passes, and he returns home, placing the bracelet on Koyuki's arm and saying that he's finished. Koyuki asks if, when she wears it, she'll be able to talk to Rio inside the domain, and he nods, explaining that its use is limited, so it would be best to only use it when truly necessary. He reflects that ever since he put the bracelet on, he has felt his magical energy connected to Koyuki's, allowing them to communicate inside the domain. However, as he said, the number of uses is limited, and if there's no energy left, it would be best not to use it unless it's urgent. The boy asks Koyuki to wear the bracelet at all times, because if she ever finds herself in danger, she can call him, and he'll come as quickly as possible. Koyuki pulls her brother's face and says that he sounds like an overprotective relative. Rio says it's time for her to sleep because the day after tomorrow, he'll go to a domain to train, and she'll have lunch with the neighbor. The girl comments that her brother has changed a lot, because before he always seemed hopeless every time he entered a domain, but now he seems excited. Rio says it's probably because he's going with a friend, and Koyuki asks if he's talking about Lisa since she wants to know more about her future sister-in-law. The boy says that Lisa is just a friend, and Koyuki jokes that everything is fine and that things will go smoothly, because fighting together is the best way to close the distance between two people, and they'll end up touching each other's hearts. That way, it would be easier for them to fall in love through the hardships they'll face together, and in the end, everything will naturally happen like a couple. But Rio tells her to stop reading those kinds of manga, saying she's overthinking, and Koyuki says she's hiding her book. Her brother interrupts her and says it's time to sleep, but Koyuki asks if he's planning to get married after falling in love. The next day, inside Rio's house, he says he's heading to the domain and asks Koyuki to take care of herself. His sister adds that if she needs anything, she'll contact him through the bracelet and that she already understands how it works. Koyuki says he should make a good impression on Lisa, and Rio replies that they are just friends after all. He finally leaves, and Koyuki wishes her brother good luck. Outside his house, Rio reflects that he managed to settle everything in just a few days and that no one from the Tawa guild has appeared again, and now he can contact Koyuki at any time. Therefore, everything is fine, and he should focus on leveling up inside the domain. Near a domain building, Lisa waves at Rio alongside her group. She says she was waiting for him to come, and the boy responds that he promised, so he had to keep his word. Lisa says she feels confident with him around, because last time, thanks to Rio cheering for her, she was able to keep moving forward. Rio gets flustered hearing Lisa say that. Remembering what Koyuki said about them falling in love, he starts stammering and Lisa notices, saying that his face is red and asking if something happened. But Rio denies it and says they should move forward. On the other side of the city, Ryuji gets out of the guild's car along with Kosaka. Then he questions if that was Rio's house, and Kosaka says that his sister had been infected by the poison and rarely left home, asking the president to wait in the car. The president then asks what he was talking about because he wouldn't let any fun pass him by, since when Rio returned, they would play something exciting. The group members introduce themselves and say that Lisa was really looking forward to going to the domain with Rio, but Lisa denies it and asks what they were talking about. Time passes, and the group enters the domain. They complain about the cold, realizing they should have brought winter clothes. Lisa says she never thought it would snow inside a domain and that staying there would be a disadvantage, so they should preserve their body heat by exercising and focusing on finding the boss. The group members agree with Lisa's orders. Rei reflects that one was a B rank and the others were C rank, with a structure similar to Takudo's, but with a different atmosphere, as they completely trusted Lisa. Because of that, they were able to join together and enter a domain in a short time, and just as Rio expected, Lisa was incredible. Lisa extends a flaming stone to Rio. She says the heat is concentrated inside, so it remains warm. Rio says he doesn't need it, and that Lisa should use it instead. Since her nose was turning red, he touches the girl. Both stand still in the snow, looking at each other. Rio is surprised by his own action, blushing, but he quickly apologizes, saying he didn't mean it that way, and Lisa tells him it's okay. Shu jokes that Akina's nose was red, and the girl asks if it really was, but Lisa tells him to stop playing around like that. Jen, however, turns around, noticing something. He senses that something is approaching. Several snow monkeys begin approaching the group, ready to fight. Sho notices the monkeys, and Akina says they look wild, but Lisa orders them to prepare for battle. With that, the group organizes themselves for the fight. Akina forms a bow with her energy. She fires, devastating a monkey's eye. Sho grabs his knives and slashes at the monkeys while saying that he was their opponent. He cuts them down, leaving them defeated on the ground. Lisa prepares her overheated sword. She charges forward with fiery energy against a monkey. Ryo slices one of the monkeys in half using his knife, but he looks to the side and sees another monkey charging at him, so he throws his knife toward it, piercing its chest. The monkeys fall defeated on the ground after the battle. Shao says Ryo was incredible and very fast, just as expected from someone Lisa admired, but Ryo tries to downplay his achievement, mentioning the monkey's weakness. Then he reflects that the system didn't appear, wondering if it meant he wouldn't evolve against weak enemies anymore, and he wanted to know how things would be in high-level domains. He says that the group members were quite strong and asks why they didn't go to a B-rank domain, but instead chose a C-rank one. Jen explains that his goal was to gradually clear each domain to restore normal life, and Akina says that's why they didn't enter high-level domains. Lisa says that she believed it was better to avoid risks and ensure everyone got home safely. Akina hugs her and says that Lisa took great care of them. Then Ryo says that's great, but he notices something different coming from his side. A strange magical energy emanates from the dense forest. He says that route seemed more convenient for them to take and that they should go through there. Lisa is surprised by the young man's decision. Then the group decides to go and quickly defeat the domain boss. An ice claw pierces the ground. Then it begins walking toward the group. Jen notices that it was entirely made of ice, while Akina says it was her first time finding a boss so quickly, and Lisa comments about the temperature. But the ice boss opens its mouth to roar. Jen crouches and creates an ice pillar in front of the group. However, the ice pillar begins to crack. The man warns that he wouldn't be able to hold it for much longer. Lisa exclaims that they need to come up with a plan, so everyone should work together, but Ryo objects, saying there was no need for that. Then he jumps from the branch, saying he would take care of it right now. The young man lands on top of the domain boss's head. He pulls out the sword from another world, which increases his power but decreases other stats by 100, and he attacks the boss, shattering its body with a single strike. The boss screams in pain after being fragmented, but its body is destroyed, and the group questions what had just happened. Akina tells everyone to look up, because Ryo had defeated the boss and was standing in front of it. Lisa wonders how he managed to defeat a C-rank boss on his own, as he was much stronger than last time, just by evolving over time. She had never met an awakened like him because, even though it was a weak boss, defeating it with a single blow was extremely excessive. Ryo levels up after defeating the boss, and he reflects that he managed to level up even in a low-rank domain, realizing that he had been wrong about it. Lisa approaches Ryo while calling out to him. Ryo asks what she thought about it, and the girl responds that he was really cool. Then Ryo suggests that next time they could go to a B-rank domain. Lisa is impressed by the suggestion, but the group says that if Ryo joins them, a B-rank domain wouldn't be so scary. Lisa then says that, in that case, they needed to prepare a plan first. Inside Ryo's house, someone knocks on the door. Koyuki gets up from the bed, worried about what it could be, but a man says he is from the security company and asks if they could open the door to let him in. She realizes they are lying because the security company never comes there, but the door explodes and Koyuki is thrown back. The girl falls to the ground, bleeding and severely injured. Ryujin says they didn't need to do that, and that if they wanted to enter, they could have just done it. Koyuki spits blood on the floor while still lying there from the impact. Ryujin approaches and asks if she is Ryo's sister because, as expected from someone he protects, she is quite cute. But if his sister were to disappear, he wouldn't be able to stay calm for a long time. Koyuki tries to reach for her bracelet. Ryujin notices the girl's actions. Then he steps on her hand to stop her, hurting her even more. He says the bracelet could contact someone inside a domain and asks if that was Ryo's precaution, as it would explain why he left her alone. But it was sad to see something like this right in front of him. Then he continues stepping on the bracelet, breaking it and reducing it to fragments. Koyuki cries while calling for her brother and tries to reach for the broken bracelet. But Ryujin says that now it was broken, though since he was a kind man, he would gather the pieces and take them with her. Thus, the soldiers of the Tawa guild grab Koyuki, restraining her by the arms. Ryujin asks if she can hear him because everything that is happening is her brother's fault. But Koyuki spits in Ryujin's face, surprising all the guild members and enraging the man. Koyuki shouts that this must be a lie and that she refuses to believe it, but she is certain that her brother will come to rescue her. Ryujin questions how he would find her. After all, the bracelet was destroyed, and he wonders how Ryo could possibly track her down while squeezing Koyuki's neck with one hand. Ryujin explains that he is looking forward to seeing Ryo's hopeless face because he is sure it will be entertaining. Inside the ice domain, Akina holds her bow and says it's amazing because it shoots ice arrows, and every time she fires, it freezes her opponent. Shio asks why he doesn't find equipment that suits him better. Then he questions when they are going to a B-rank domain. Ryo says he could go any day, and Akina says that's sad because they sound like a couple. But Lisa comments that since Ryo defeated the boss and gave Akina the ice arrow, he should keep the energy Q. And Ryo tells her to relax as he didn't come for that and already had everything he needed, so she could keep the Q. Thus, the group members comment that he is very kind. But Ryo suddenly jerks his head in shock, and Lisa asks what's wrong. He realizes that something is off with the bracelet, because before it pulsed with magical energy, and he felt his connection with his sister. But when he tries to use the bracelet, the bands of magical energy dissipate. Ryo cannot locate Koyuki and wonders if something happened to her bracelet. Then he runs, saying that Koyuki is in danger. Jen asks what's wrong, and Lisa runs with him, telling the others to catch up later. Inside Ryo's house, he searches for his sister amid all the mess. Then he shouts that her big brother is back, hoping the girl will appear, but he gets no response. Then he pulls out his phone, seeing a picture of Koyuki tied up. The phone vibrates again. Ryo answers the call, and Ryujin asks if he wants to play a game, because he has 12 hours to find his sister, and if he fails to find her within that time, he will never see her again. Ryo asks where he is, but the call disconnects. Then he falls to the ground, devastated. Lisa arrives with the group and asks what happened there, but Ryo explains that Ryujin Okawa kidnapped his sister, and that now he had to find her within 12 hours. Jen asks if it was the president of the Tawa guild, and Shu comments that they were the most powerful ones there, with Akina adding that he was an A rank and very powerful. Ryo says he didn't want to involve others in his family problems, and that he would handle it on his own, so everyone there should go home. Lisa questions what the hell Ryo thought they were. Jen states that exactly because of the enemy's strength, he couldn't be alone, and Shu says it would be faster together, while Akina adds that the more, the better. Ryo smiles and thanks his friends for their help. With 12 hours remaining, they search for the building, but they find only an empty room. Jen says they searched in all the likely places, but it just looked like an office, and the whole building was empty. With 8 hours left, Ryo remembers that there was a house used exclusively by the Tawa Guild and suggests splitting up to search for it. So he opens the door to the house, but finds only an empty room. Akina says they searched everywhere but found nothing. Time remaining, 5 hours. Ryo goes to the black market and says that the Tawa Guild kidnapped his sister, asking if there was any secret base as he would pay whatever was necessary. The attendant replies that it wasn't a matter of money, but that they wanted something he didn't have. Therefore, she didn't know about secret bases. With 2 hours left, they gather in the park, and Lisa says they searched everywhere possible but found nothing. Okawa could have wiped everything clean. Ryo says that he was planning to break him emotionally, making him suffer for refusing to join the guild. Jen says that's terrible, and Shu questions what they would do if she was in a domain. But Akina notes that there were many, and they couldn't search them all. But they only had 2 hours left on the clock. Ryo tries to calm himself to avoid panicking, as Koyuki was probably waiting for them. Then he asks the system for help but gets no response, and curses it mentally for staying silent at that moment. But his bracelet begins to glow. Ryo realizes that communication was cut off, but he could still feel some residual magical energy. The same applied to Koyuki's bracelet, so all he needed to do was track the magical energy using his perception. Then he suddenly opens his eyes. Filled with energy, he analyzes all possible locations. Sho asks what was happening with Ryo, but Lisa says he probably found Koyuki. Then, the young man glows blue as he activates his energy. And finally, he discovers the location through his magic. He starts running, saying it was this way. Lisa orders the group to follow while she goes with him. Inside an abandoned building in the city, Ryo explains that Koyuki was inside, in a destroyed warehouse. Ryujin watches everything through the computer cameras. Then, Kosaka asks how Ryo was able to find them there. Ryuji comments that among all the bases, that was the hardest to locate, and he couldn't have done it fairly. Then he looks at Koyuki suffering while holding the bracelet, seeing that energy was still emanating from it. Ryujin concludes that he made a mistake because even breaking the bracelet, he still caused problems. Kosaka suggests that if Ryo found them because of the bracelet, they should destroy it completely. But Ryujin refuses, saying that they locked her in an isolation room, and that the game had only just begun. Ryo looks at the bracelet and realizes he no longer feels Koyuki's magical energy. Then he turns to the others and tells them to stay on alert because they would likely try to escape. But suddenly, a sword is thrown at Ryo. The boy senses the blade with his heightened senses, but blocks the assassin's attack with his sword. The assassin jumps back, retreating to a group of assassins. Then he says that Ryo would soon be one of them. But Ryo doesn't care in the slightest and charges forward, cutting him down completely, while telling everyone to get out of his way as we see that the remaining time is 1 hour.
Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.